We're live.
All right. It is the week of the Rogue Invitational. I think pretty much since the inception of it in 2019, it's been the premier CrossFit or functional fitness or whatever you want to call it, off-season event for the best athletes in the world. And for the first time, they've taken it overseas, which by all accounts that I can come up with makes it the biggest or most prestigious group of athletes that ever has competed internationally. In any given year, usually the CrossFit Games has the best group of athletes from top to bottom, and the Rogue Invitational is second. And those competitions have all always taken place in the United States up to this point. So this is a pretty big deal for Europe. It's a pretty big deal for, I think, the European athletes. We're going to get into that a little bit. And we've got two shows scheduled this week that are dedicated to it, since it's such a big competition with so many of the best athletes in the world. Tonight, we're going to start with the women, where I think in general, the storyline is pretty focused. And then, you know, at the top especially, and on Wednesday, we're going to do the men, where it's a pretty stout field from top to bottom. I think it is the best 20 men that have ever competed at the Rogue Invitational, and on par with some of the top 20, 1 through 20 finishers at the games that we've had, even as it was a really high caliber of athletes who made it through the qualifier. So we have some guests on the show today that have been with us in the past here and there, Alexys and Carolyn Prevost. We're a bit scattered across the globe. Patrick is, of course, in Germany. I'm in Madrid. It's 10 o'clock at night for both of us. One of you is on the East Coast and one of you is on the West Coast. I always get it confused.
Yeah, I'm in Toronto and Alexys is in California right now.
And both of you are getting
Scotland
set
tomorrow,
for some.
though.
That's right.
Yep.
Both of you are getting set for some travel, Scotland. So you guys will leave on Tuesday from the States, probably get there sometime on Wednesday and have, close to 48 hours to acclimate. Maybe be a little more calm 48 hours for one of you than the other. I don't know. But either way, I have, in the times that we've had you on the show, I've been really impressed with your knowledge, both of you's general knowledge of, the top women in the world, especially. Not to say that you're not good with the men, but you guys have both had a vested interest in knowing about the women's field throughout your careers. And also, Carolyn, you've been pretty instrumental in the Rogue, and really the history of Rogue, whether it's as a competitor, testing athletes, testing workouts for them. So I think that it's a pretty cool to have your perspectives. And then obviously we got a little bit of a gift today. I mean, if you study the history of Rogue, it's not unusual for them to release most of their workouts the Monday, a week of the competition. These workouts were released today, and we'll take a look at them. They are pretty much along the lines of what we'd expect in terms of total volume of workouts, some of the similar implements, styles of workouts. There's some details that are missing, and there's some workouts that are missing. We're not interested in picking Carolyn's brain about any information that she cannot share with us. So we're not going to go into really much speculation about what types of things might be hidden within the clues and blah, blah, blah. We're going to stick to the facts, and the primary focus is to compare kind of our predictions for the field and talk about the women that have been privileged enough or really have earned the right to be competing this year. Yes, we didn't really advertise who the guests were going to be, so surprise for everyone who's watching. And Justine, Carolyn, did you test any of the workouts this year?
Yes, I tested, I think, all of them this year. No, all of them, but the heavy
Two unnamed ones.
The heavy rope double under one I did not test. I don't think I would give them very good feedback on that one. So I told Katie, and I was like, I know about what people can do, but I don't think I'm the best person for that one. So I think that one is the only one I did not test. Maybe the finale.
I'll never.
There's a few of them that they don't really need the test if they already have their ideas in mind. And even from what I tested, there's a couple little changes that I noticed today.
Yeah, and that's pretty commonplace. Competitions in general, they'll get something on paper. They'll have whomever their testing athletes are test it. They'll revise it. They might send it out to a trusted group of people. And then sometimes there's logistical issues. Sometimes you don't get all the equipment you want. Sometimes there's whatever variables. And in the case of Rogue, similarly to some other competitions, Dubai has done this in the past. The Games obviously has done this in the past. They'll release something like a wall complex, and then you don't know the details of what that is until you get there or the day of. So they hold a couple cards close to the chest. That is, Carolyn, on pegboard there, the horizontal pegboard that Rogue posted a few, I don't know, days to a week ago, October 23rd, a couple of weeks ago. We've seen a bunch of the athletes testing this. It did show up in a competition in Egypt a couple of years ago. I have been in a few gyms around the world that have these horizontal pegboards on them. Had you ever used one before?
I couldn't recall using one. Like, I feel like I've done a lot of like Ninja Warrior stuff, and I've probably done like a little bit, but not to the extent of this. This is one of the ones where it changed a little bit from what I tested, but I think it's good that they released it early, just for people to practice. It's a very technical, like you can definitely get much better with some more repetition versus people, arriving at the competition and not really getting any feel for the movement. Like, I think that they didn't want to be testing adaptability on the spot of that, and they just want to see who's going to be the fittest. And I think it's a great implement to add, and people are going to be starting to work on it and going to be a lot better than what we've seen their practice attempts on Instagram. And I expect that to be a big factor in the workout, but not as much as if they hadn't released it early.
I think also, I was just going to say, Carolyn has done a horizontal pegboard. I don't know if she remembers, but one of our friends is like big in the OCR space. And we went to their house one time and played this like dart game. And each dart or each point on the dart was a different implement that you had to go and try. And one of them was more of the horizontal peg. And one of the cool things that I had learned from it, it's like extremely difficult because you don't have the same leverage like you would on a wall, where you could kind of take away that dead weight of your legs to help you up the wall. And I've been relatively stronger, I would say, at a pegboard movement just from my upper body strength, versus this is kind of more of like actually getting the technique of finding the hole for the peg and moving across the horizontal pegboard. Grip strength plays a lot into factor, and then also just like making sure you're stable, because if you try to go too fast and you miss a peg, like, you're kind of stuck there. But if you've been in the OCR space and even watched some of those videos, they have some interesting techniques for what they do that I've gotten to play around with. One of those is you go forward to backward, so you're alternating front to back, and actually rotating your entire body, which allows you to like propel and kind of utilize that momentum that maybe just staying forward doesn't. And you don't have to meet that peg. You could kind of skip a couple pegs to get there, but that one takes a lot of technique to learn and master. So it'd be interesting to see if anybody plays with the backwards forward flipping of their body on the pegboard, especially if they have if they're an upper body specialist.
It essentially looks like a monkey bar. Like, they're like this, and then they go here, and then they'll rotate and come back to here, and then just stick it. I don't know if you can tell what that looks like, but that's a technique that we've seen. So versus the lateral one where you just kind of swing.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, it's a risk reward too. Like, if you want to skip some and then you start missing, that whole, like, there's like when we tested the horizontal pegboard at our friend's house, like, it's just like sometimes it's almost better to go smaller and be more precise in your pegging than taking the risk, but then you're less time under tension. So it's a risk reward for sure. Yeah. And people have gone to play with it now for a couple weeks, and
I like the way I like the word they use, Carolyn, is like when a competition is programming something new, they have to choose between, do they want to test that adaptability or do they want to test the fitness? And a lot of times, if you choose to test the adaptability, you may see one or two athletes who've happened to have one or done one for whatever reason, and the rest of them that, like, man, even if they had 1 day or 2 days, it would have made a drastic difference. And then you're kind of left asking yourself the question, should we have told them earlier? It's it's the classic example is the clip into the bike for the crit race. They release it a month ahead of time so that it's not a little nuance of getting on a bike with a clip. That is, like, you have to learn how to do that, but it has nothing to do with being fit.
I'm not saying they released it because they saw me doing it, but just saying they did release it after they saw me doing it.
It might have been.
No,
because they saw.
It wasn't as bad, but it did miss a few times, and it was.
Yeah.
So
it definitely got challenging.
Because it's one pegboard in between all of those implements. I'll be curious to see if they require them to do a certain amount of it unbroken. And if they drop early, will they have to go all the way back to the beginning, or do they have to go all the way across unbroken? Or, if they fall and they could start where they are. It'll be interesting to see what their expectations are for those, especially because they released the workout, or not the workout, but the movement a little bit early for people to practice. So we'll see what they have there too.
I say they just bring in the Ninja Warrior thing and put a giant pool underneath it. So if you fall, that's the price you pay.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Lex said, like now that they've released it early, they could be more strict on whatever standard they want to implement. Like I said, I tested a different version of this. I won't say what I tested. And then they have this version now. And with people practicing, I don't know what, like, again, I don't know what kind of standards that they put together after. I just do what I test, and it'll be interesting to see if they require what kind of requirements they do have for that one pegboard that they have.
Well, we'll just since they did release these today, we'll just kind of look at the overview of the workouts here. So they've got 3 days of competition. 9 total events have been advertised here, 3 per day, very much in style of what we've seen in recent years at Rogue. The first event is a long one with a heavy implement, which is very common for a first event at Rogue. It's a 10-round sandbag carry, an unspecified amount, and 400-meter run for anyone who's listening and isn't looking at this. Then they'll go to basically like a little sprint chipper, some calories on the Echo bike, 16 ring muscle ups, 8 squat snatches, and 6 shuttle sprints to finish. Ring muscle ups always show up in the Rogue Invitational. This is actually a low total volume of ring muscle ups compared to a normal year, but Echo bike is commonplace there. Squat snatching is commonplace, and they usually have running in 3-ish different capacities. So it shows up in some capacity in the first 2 implements, and then a little wall walk, heavy back squat, I guess combination 8642 of a wall walk complex, unadvertised what that means, and the back squat. We've seen some variations of these back squats, heavy back squats with some gymnastics over the last few years at Rogue now. Alexys and then Carolyn, just general thoughts on day one when you look at these 3 events.
I'll start because Carolyn has tested them and has experience in them. Just from me, who is just seeing them now, I think it's a good combination of longer endurance based. So I think you'll see some of the typical athletes that we see towards the front from an endurance-based workout. For example, Haley Adams, maybe Emily Rolfe on that first one. And once we get into like our top list, we could talk more about that. But those ones kind of coming to mind for that. And even like a Gabby Migala, I think will do well at some of those, that longer running and the sandbag carry. And then, as the day progresses, you get more of like the heavier movement. So towards the end, you see the heavy back squat, which also is interesting because it comes after, like a longer running workout. So we'll be curious to see how everybody's legs are going into the end of the day with the back squats. But I think it does a good job at balancing that, longer endurance versus a heavier workout that we'll see when we get to that back squat workout. So you might see some other people come out in front on the Braveheart event than the quicksand one, just based on that. So coming out of day one, you might have some interesting leaders out there, but also curious to see what the wall walk complex is. So I don't know if it's, wall walking onto plates and, walking back down, or what that actually looked like from a twist to that one too.
Yeah, I think that you look at these workouts and you just want to do them. Like, they're fun to do.
Wait, you do? Oh God.
I want to do them for sure. Like, definitely 2 and 3. I don't know about running 4K for me.
That's good for me.
I think the first one is a very typical rogue workout that's on day 1, which is a little bit longer time domain. You have that run. They've added a carry multiple times. We've done running the Texas run that we had a weight plate with a couple objects that we moved, and we ran. They had the one year where they ran and then they had a bag that they were dragging or something at one point. And then last year they did a couple miles, and then they had the carry. So this seems to be a theme of a first workout. Obviously, we don't know what kind of bag, if it's during the run, if it's little, like, we have no idea like what that 10 round entails, but it's pretty similar in terms of how it's written to previous events. And I think you're going to see those Tia, Jeff separate themselves as good runners and stuff like that. And I think the Gabby pick is also a very good one. The second,
don't count Laura out there.
Oh no, Laura's always relevant. The second one, to me, I see a difference between the men and the women in this one. I think the 16 ring muscle ups is, for most men, they can do that unbroken. And I think for the women, it's that sweet spot number where it's like, you could go unbroken, but at what expense of your snatches? Lex and I did the Atlas Games a few years ago, and we had this combination of ring muscle ups. I think it was like a burpee box jump over with moderate heavy snatch at 145, I think it was, for the females. And just coming off the rings and the pressing, going into that, technical shoulder, I would not be surprised to see a few people push the envelope here on the front part and possibly have a miss or two on the initial snatches until they can kind of get settled. I think you have a few females that can separate themselves with their pulling capacity. Like, you'd look at Emma Tall, Gazan were some of the ones that were able to do the 15 unbroken at semifinals this year. Now, again, is it worth the risk of doing that or taking that small break and then feeling better going into the snatches? The Echo Bike.
I wanted to ask you about the Echo Bike because, especially in the men's field, the Echo Bike has like ascended to be this thing where there's like, hey, I'm the king of the Echo Bike. I don't think it's really going to factor in much here compared to some of the movements that are right behind it.
I think many people will come off the bike around the same time. You also have to be smart because I just think back to the Atlas Games. We had shorty bars, and it feels a lot different on a shorty bar than the regular, or even just coming off of a high heart rate movement. So instead of Echo Bike, we had burpee box jump overs, but still pretty similar to get your heart rate up, and takes a lot. And we had 30 ring muscle ups as our buy-in. So getting to the barbell after doing those types of movement, a high heart rate, and then also just a pulling movement, it's kind of a shock to the system. And I'll just be curious how people decide to tackle those ring muscle ups before getting to the squat snatch, especially, thinking you have this period of time before you're going to be out on the floor. 160, I think, for women is one that we still have to think about before hitting. It's not something that will just, be automatic for many of us. Even the elites, you still are thinking about that number. I still think that 225 feels a little bit different in comparison to a 160 from the men to the women too. So like, if I look at this one, maybe I would have wanted the ring muscle ups to be a little bit higher for the men to be comparable to how it will feel from a woman doing this workout.
Yeah, I wanted to get your guys' opinion on that, actually. I just came from a competition in Spain, and another movement that generally favors the men over the women in terms of volume that they can handle is legless rope climb. The men had in this workout 6-4-2 legless rope climb. The women had 6-4 and 2 rope climbs, but only half of them were legless. It was 3 legless, 3 regular, 2 legless, 2 regular, 1 legless, 1 regular. And we often see calories on a machine. Sometimes we see legless rope climbs defer a little bit, men to women. We rarely see a difference in the ring muscle up, but we know that there's a difference in capacity there. Do you have any opinions or thoughts as to why that doesn't happen?
I'm not sure, but it should happen a little bit more often. I don't think the women are just as strong upper body as, you know, the men in terms of the volume of the upper body pull and press. And it sometimes it just changes what the workout is. But I think this second workout is very well balanced in terms of you have monostructural, you have gymnastics, you have a weightlifting component. You know, you got to run after, and how your legs feeling coming off of, you know, how fast you're going to be pushing those squat snatches. I really like the balance of this test. I just think it's a little bit different in terms of the ring muscle up for the women as the men, but I don't mind it. I think this is a great test. I think, you know,
I like tests like this because it's
I think
not.
that people, what's that?
I like tests like this because it's not obvious what if that the best person in ring muscle up is going to win, or the best squat snatcher is going to win. There's an opportunity for different people to express where they have, you know, slight advantages over the field.
And the difference in a squat snatch versus a power snatch is huge. You know, I think if it was power snatch, it changes the whole workout, and people would be attacking those ring muscle ups a lot more, and they can catch under a little bit of fatigue and power, just power, especially the females in this field. There's a lot of very, very strong ones. If you have power, it just would be way different. The squat snatches have, you know, a lot more stability in the shoulders, and then you're also using your legs a little bit more going into the run. So it'll be interesting to see how long those runs are and how much of a factor that is, if there's going to be any foot races at the finish line for that.
I hope so.
I hope so too. I think this is going to be a very exciting workout to watch. The first one, I mean, not as exciting, but the fact that it's repeats of 400 meters, to me, like, if they're inside or they come back in, like we've seen in the previous year, we might see some lead changes and whatnot. So I think that's fun, but I'm really looking forward to number 2. I think on paper, it's one of the ones that I'm looking the most forward to watching.
Yeah, I think that one will have a lot more races at the end than the first one. Like the first one, you'll see people separate themselves right away in those first rounds. But that second one, you just don't know. And you can make up quite a bit of time if, you know, they're a stronger snatcher and they broke on the rings and aren't taking those breaks in between to when they get to those shuttles run to see how they're pushing it and then what the foot race looks like at the end.
And I would say event 3 is, if you were going to compare it to what Alexys just said, is probably more similar to event 1, what we've seen in the past with both, you know, snatch and press type workouts where there's these strict pressing movements potentially, and also the back attack workouts that they've had, is that you might have a race between 2 athletes here and 2 athletes here and 2 athletes here, but it strings out a little bit.
Yeah, and like I said, for event 3, I'm curious what the wall walk complex will be, if that becomes a limiting factor like a back squat would be for some, you know, some of the people in the field, because then it would be a better balance between gymnastics versus strength. And some people could pull away from a gymnastics piece that could maybe potentially break up their back squats.
All right, well, that's day 1. I think the legs are going to be hurting a bit after the first day, and it'll, you know, potentially the upper body pressing muscles as well, depending on how difficult that wall complex is with the muscle ups and the stabilization of the snatch overhead. So it's pretty, you know, it's a pretty good day 1, and you know, you guys know this as athletes. I think sometimes it doesn't get talked about enough, but the ability to do a really hard day of competition and then recover and come back and do another one is a skill that's not expressed on a leaderboard in isolation. But even with the 20 of the best in the world, there will be people that handle that better than others. And the second day doesn't really get very much easier. You think about the heavy back squats, the squat snatches, potentially 5K of running. I mean, if it's 10 rounds of 100-meter sandbag here, that's a 5K run to kick things off. And you just come back in the morning and you have a 1,000-meter row on bookends of a down and back chipper that also has 60 thrusters at 135.95. I mean, the squatting volume here is through 4 events is about as high as you'll see in any competition anywhere.
Yeah, this one is like a elevated Jackie plus maybe haggis. Hunting haggis is a cousin, but it looks brutal. I'm excited. I love the log muscle ups. I think it's a cool movement to have as like your peak there. And then going back to the valley with the thrusters to end on the row. Your legs are going to be or your legs may be sore from event 3 on Friday and also all the running, but this will be a good one just to kind of start the day a little bit longer, and then Jackie's angry cousin there. So
yeah, interesting to see the differences in the log muscle up volume here versus the ring muscle ups, but it's not as surprising because the men were able to link in the past few years multiple reps, and the women for the most part were doing singles. I think Ariel was one of the athletes. Gazan, I think, may have been another athlete that linked a few of the log muscle ups. So I understand that volume change there. Meters for row, I don't know how much separation will be there. I think it's more of a buy-in. Anytime there's meters versus cals can be different, but ending on a row is just not fun to do.
hard.
If you take away that 30 and 1,000 at the end and you're just going through like all the way up to the 20 and 30, it's a completely different workout, but having to sell your soul at the end on the row is going to be gross. This is a nasty one.
Yeah, I would say that first. I was just going to say the first 1K and 30 thrusters don't mean anything here. It's how, that back end of the workout. So not coming out too hot on that first 1K, save yourself a couple of seconds, because the amount that you're gaining for a couple additional seconds on a row for that effort is a lot, or like not worth it. So save yourself, come off, and then, push it more on the back end of the workout where it actually matters.
I just want to make a quick note for Wednesday that on the right side there, Jorge Fernandez did not think it was enough to put 4 fire emojis. He immediately had to follow it up with 5 more fire emojis. So clearly the athletes are excited for the 9 workouts, 9 fire emojis. Anyway, I think, this is, if you're an athlete and you're looking at this event, you're dreaming of a scenario where you finish the last 30 thrusters and you walk to the rower and you don't see anybody else walking to the rower. And you're dreading the scenario where there's 2 other guys coming with you. Anyway, they'll move on to Devil's Tail, event 5, middle of the day. It's the last event that we know of on this day. There is an event 6. We're not going to speculate really too much about what it is, but in the last couple of years, there's been a heavy specialty rogue event-esque. It's some kind of log lift, heavy deadlift with special plates on a Saturday night under the lights. So potentially will be something like this, or an elimination style workout, which isn't in the slate of workouts here and has been the last 3. But either way, they have the Sear dumbbell here. We had the Sear, I guess it's called the Sear bell. We had the Sear bell last year. Rogue recently posted a series of clips where they showed Laura moving the Sear bell and nobody else in sight. They said she basically looked like she was doing this workout on her own. It weighs 100 pounds for the men, 70 pounds for the women. We're going to see it twice this year. A devil's press with it. It's thick. I mean, my understanding is the grip is not very easy to hold compared to a regular dumbbell. That sounds miserable.
I mean, I don't think before me testing, I don't know if I've ever done devil's press at that weight. I think the most I had done is 55 pounds at with a double dumbbell, I want to say, at the Dubai 2018. It was like a finale, I want to say, and I had 55, but I'd never tried 70. So you got 42 reps there, 9 rope climbs. I think it's safe to say, just by looking at that for this caliber of athletes, the rope climbs are not as much of the factor, but it, when you pair that with a grippy movement and pulling, you may feel some of that effect on the rope, but I think that those devil's press will be the sweet spot there, I think.
Yeah, and I think 21 devil's press on the same arm, unless they're allowing you to alternate.
Did they say?
One. I'm not sure.
It doesn't say. It's
so hopefully they allow you to alternate each one, and and it's not on the same arm. But I think just 42 devil's press at 72 pounds, like you just want to have a consistent pace. But the girls that I see kind of, leading that way are the ones that are stronger with good pulling strength. So I think, you can see Emma Tall do really well here, Laura Horvath as well, as some that can be, pulling away from the others, especially coming off that first set of 21.
So like we said, we have an event 6, don't know what it is. This will pave the way for Sunday, the final day, which similarly to Saturday has 3 events listed, but only 2 that are specified. The first one is that horizontal pegboard with some ski ergs and some GHD sit-ups. GHD sit-ups also regularly showing up at Rogue. I think, there's going to be 2 kind of things here. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but if you figure out the pegboard, then you have a ski erg and GHD race. If you can't figure out the pegboard, the ski erg and GHD is irrelevant.
I agree. I mean, if you, especially with one pegboard versus like multiple on the spot, if you have that one and you can come across pretty fast, then you're looking at pushing the pace probably of the ski erg and the GHD. And yeah, I'm just excited to see this one and to see the athletes and how they're going to take this this new challenge on. For most of them, it'll be their first time having this as a movement at a competition. For a couple of them, they have done it before.
Alexys, anything you want to add on that one?
Nope. I'll just be curious to see who comes off that first pegboard well. And that can kind of be the decider of how the event will go, is if they're comfortable with that first peg. And then, what separating themselves from, others off of that first one. So curious to see. And also, like I mentioned earlier, just what their standard is going to be for there. Is it like you have to go through one of the pegboards and then you could drop, or do you have to go all the way across as a requirement for that one? Because that will change, the workout and how much rest you need before you start climbing.
Yeah, we sometimes it's referred to in the judges don't worry, Scott. We'll get to you. Sometimes they're called expensive reps. And obviously a traditional pegboard, you have to go to the top and get to the bottom. And if you don't do that, if you come one hole short of it, the whole thing is for nothing. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's also the case here. And then in the next event that day, it's 3 rounds for time, 100 heavy double under, heavy rope double under, 50-foot single arm, same sear bell overhead walking lunge, and then 100-foot handstand walk. Oftentimes, with top tier athletes, handstand walks are more than they seem on paper, whether it's just an unbroken section of however far, if there's an obstacle course, a ramp, a slalom, a pirouette, or whatever. But I am kind of hoping that on Sunday in both events 7 and 8, that the pegboard traverse is mandated as an unbroken set. And if you come down, you have to start back at the beginning, because then it puts a premium on really evaluating where you're at. And you might see 2 people get there at the same time. One person think they have it and go, the other person take an extra 30 seconds and end up paying off for them in the end. So it's a little cat and mouse potential. And same thing with the handstand walk, especially when you think about all of the gymnastics that already been done, all of the upper body pressing that's already been done. If you put, even if it's 2 50-foot sections, both unbroken, or some element like this in there, then there's like these opportunities on the last day for people to take a chance and make a big move, or take a chance because they need to and not have it pay off. So, maybe we'll see if those things happen, we can see some big point swings potentially on the last day.
Yeah, and those heavy rope double unders, like I'm not sure if everyone in the field has that rope skipping rope. I think most of them have probably played around with it. I think at that volume of 100, that can be a separation as well. Especially if you're able to go unbroken and then you're fine with the other 2 movements.
Somebody mute her. She's not allowed to talk about double unders.
Here, I'll talk. So 100 heavy rope double unders, I would say 1, it fatigues your grip, and 2, it fatigues your shoulders. So I'm curious to see, I'm sure many will try to go unbroken on that, especially the first round. But just, going into a single arm overhead walking lunge and then right into a handstand walk, that's a lot of shoulders. So it will be interesting to see how rounds 2 and 3 play out, coming off of that heavy rope double under, just because of what it does from a shoulder piece and a grip fatigue piece. It always, like when I had that paired with legless rope climbs at the Mayhem Classic, my forearms were so blown up. So I think it's just a lot, and we'll see how that plays out, especially with that heavier dumbbell.
Yeah, I think you can see some lead changes for sure in rounds 2 and 3, like as they get fatigue in the shoulders and their cardio too with the skipping. That if their double unders start deteriorating, like what happens to me every competition with this volume, then you're going to be getting some people just taking the lead right there off the double unders and then going into the final part. And then we don't know if anything is mandated unbroken for the handstand walk. Just looking at the flooring here, it has 50-foot single arm. So I don't know if it's going to be like 25 down and back, or if it's a 50-foot, then maybe we can maybe it's a 50-foot unbroken. I didn't test this one, but I'm just speculating like I would normally.
Maybe 50-foot unbroken would be likely, or it'd be interesting if they require something else in there, like a pirouette or something, in the middle. But if it's just a standard handstand walk, that's a lot more racing. And Carolyn knows all about that from Crash Crucible, like when you just require a certain distance, and there's no obstacles, no pirouette in the middle or whatever you could add to it. It's more of, are the girls that are just faster on their hands able to sprint those handstand walks and get ahead there?
There was a guy at the competition I did this last weekend, and after 3 rounds of legless rope climbs and lunges and a 1,200-meter run through the hills of Bilbao, they had 3 12-meter sections of unbroken handstand walk. And at the end, he did the first one, he did the second one, and he was in second place in his heat, and he came up about a meter short of the third one, and he didn't finish the workout under the time cap 4.5 minutes later. So, it can happen. These are, a higher level of athlete, but they're going to be pushing the intensity, the pace, the total volume of the work up to this point is a lot. So, that's just a general preview. They announced the workouts today, so we would be remiss not to acknowledge that, talk about them a little bit. And certainly when you're evaluating the potential for the athletes in the field, looking at the workouts is a really fun thing to do as well. The general theme of this show is meant to be to look at our predictions on the women's side of things. Patrick and I decided to put our picks out a while ago, 10 days ago or something like that, to give you guys a chance to weigh in, ask some questions. Caroline and Alexys sent us their picks earlier today. I think Patrick has a graphic with.
And this was before the workouts were released as well.
Correct.
All of these picks were made before the workouts were released. So like I said, you've seen mine, you've seen Patrick's if you've looked on the B.Friendly Instagram channel. And on the right are the collective brainchild of Carolyn and Alexys. And we're just going to kind of start at the top, work our way down. We'll spend some more time with certain athletes than others based on just different discrepancies that we have. There's also an article on B.Friendly Fitness that Patrick and I wrote that you guys can check. We might reference it a few times during the show, that just gives statements or a couple of sentences from either him or I about the strengths and weaknesses of specific athletes and why they fall where they fall. And the last thing that I want to say is, it's so hard to get into this competition. It is arguably harder to be an athlete competing on the floor at the Rogue Invitational than the CrossFit Games. And every athlete on here is amazing, and some of them are going to finish in the bottom 5. That's how it always goes. Nothing that we're saying here is a disrespect to any of these athletes, but it needs to be understood that if you're the 20th best person in the world, that is massively different from being the second best person in the world. And along the way, there's different levels to this fitness thing, and it gets more and more difficult to climb up those rankings as you go. So huge credit to all the women for making it. Huge credit to Patrick for this awesome graphic that he put together in a pretty small amount of time. And we're going to turn it over to the girls who have picked Laura Horvath to repeat as a rogue champion. Actually, it would be a three-peat for her as a rogue champion. 2 years ago, Tia wasn't in the field. Last year, they had a duel down to the last event. And you guys think she's going to do it again?
Go ahead, Lex. Do you want to start from the bottom up or the top?
Top.
No,
Top.
we'll start at the top.
Top down.
Carolyn, do you want to go first? And then
Yeah,
I'll just add to yours.
So the only thing that was released was the lateral pegboard at that point. Just traditionally, rogue being heavier. Laura missing the games this year, having a chip on her shoulder, having beaten Tia last year and getting that confidence that just to finally, someone finally did it. We felt like we could, until Laura gets beat here at Rogue these last couple of years, I think she's capable of winning.
Yeah.
She has some work, like with knowing these workouts now, there's some workouts that are going to be very good for her. And there's a couple of them that I could see Tia not winning and losing several points to someone like Laura. So it'll be difficult, but if she has very, very good execution, I think it's doable.
Yeah. And just to add to that, so the horizontal pegboard, I think Laura was probably licking her chops at that, just with her background in climbing. I think she has a good foundation there. I did see Tia playing around with it, and I'm sure Tia will pick it up relatively quickly just based on her ability. But it did look like a bit of a challenge for her when she was practicing it. And now seeing the workouts now, I think, like Carolyn mentioned, Tia may have some where she won't win and she could lose points to Laura just from the gap. So it will be really close depending on it. And we'll get to Gabby, but I think Gabby will come into play a lot there and can even push, those 1 and 2 spots as well, just based on where her fitness is. The only one that I may have a little bit of concern with Laura at the top is the one with the wall walk, again, because we don't know what that complex looks like. If it has like something from a deficit that they have to go up to and then do something with a deficit, and we know how Laura is with that. So I'm curious what that complex will look like, and if that will impact Laura if her weakness does show up. But I think it's going to be a good push, and it will be close between Tia and Laura. I put their names together, Leah. But just based on Laura winning last year, putting some respect on her name. She was, a champion. Obviously, this past CrossFit Games, she wasn't there to finish the weekend out. But I do think that she is still a high caliber competitor. And until she gets dethroned from the top from Rogue Invitational, she should stay there.
PC, I'm going to give you a chance to make an argument for Tia in a second, but I want to just add a couple things about Laura here. The last 2 years last year she had a 14th place finish on kind of the upper body handstand pressing event. She had a 14th and a 19th the year before when Tia wasn't in the field. So she can have a bad finish and still win the competition. Also, just in case people didn't know, there's only ever been 2 female champions at Rogue. Tia won the first 3, Laura's won the last 2. We're going to talk about, I think, as Lex just teased, can anybody upset both of them and possibly pull it off in a second? And also those 2 events that are outstanding, if either of them happen to be an elimination style event, the premier heavy lifting under the lights on Saturday night, or the final, which one of them is the final, in the last 2 years, on those 3 events, the dual events, the lifting event, and the final, Laura's finishes have been first, second, or third on all 6 of those events. So the unknown events are also very good for Laura. She crushed everyone with the seer dumbbell or seer bell. We get to see it twice. So it's not out of the realm of possibility for Laura to win this thing. But Patrick and I both picked Tia. Patrick's been very patient for 45 minutes. PC, why do you think Tia is gonna reclaim the title this weekend?
I mean, I think there's really not much I can say. I mean, she's the GOAT. I mean, up until pregnancy, and then last year she'd won 15 straight major live competitions. And And like I said, that would have kept on going if it wasn't for 6 months later after giving birth, she decided to throw her hat at Rogue to kind of see where she was at. And she only lost by 10 points. Like you said, it came down to the final event. It was, and it just happened to be a really good event for Laura. And I think Tia still finished third in that event. But no, I just think Tia, after seeing
what was that stat you told me earlier about the event wins she's had at Rogue?
Oh yeah, so she's been a part. The competitions that she's competed at, there's been a total of 31 events. So that's that. Taking away 2022, where she didn't compete, 31 total events. She's won 12 of the 31 possible events. So that's an average. I think what's the average of?
You said it was 37%.
39%. 39%. So, I mean, that's it's closer to half than it is to a quarter. All I'm saying is, but I mean, you can look at a lot of these events and easily slot Tia as someone that wins it. And I think that's what kind of leads me. And Alexys, you brought up a great point about not just Laura. Laura, I don't think Laura could flat out beat Tia. I think for her to win, and especially in a week-long competition when you have 10 events, I think that what she needs is someone like Gabby, who can, them collectively, almost like NASCAR, when you have teams where you can kind of middle some people. And which will be interesting to see because of all the, speculation on what's going on with Laura and Gabby and stuff like that. But I think you brought up a great point with that, Alexys, in terms of Gabby and some other athletes trying to middle that, it's not, Tia isn't as dominant as she was, the first 3 years of Rogue when she didn't have that competition. Now she has.
I would just like the fact that Jeff and Laura didn't compete at the games this year. If they came here and they both won here, there would be so many talking points for the next season, and it would be so exciting. So just the idea of having Laura come out on top is just gonna, create a lot of
conversation.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you guys think it's a fair statement to say that this is sort of the highest anticipation in terms of a one-on-one battle on the women's side that we've seen in at least 6 or 7 years?
Yeah, for sure. I don't think that anyone's been that close to Tia. We saw Mal was getting close, and then we weren't sure, and then she obviously stepped aside. But this is, I don't think that there's been anyone that's pushed as close to Tia as possible. And really, Laura's been the best female athlete in the last, since 2018, since she debuted at the games in 2018 and got a second place. She's been consistently that top player. She just happened to be competing in an era that Tia is in, which is unfortunate to Laura. Similar to, someone like Pat, who was, probably the best in these last few years before Matt was, when Matt was there. But I mean, Laura's been very consistent and right up there. And now she's finally getting a few more female athletes that can help her and create that chance that she could take over Tia. Now, she would need a perfect execution. We're not dumb, Lex and I. We know that Tia can easily win. We'd also want to put Laura on top and see what happens from there.
Do we know? I was going to ask from Laura Horvath. So before she was following Ben Smith's programming, I believe. Is she doing the Simmons programming now? I've seen them tagged in a couple of her pieces. So I'm curious if she changed programming, how that will, affect her now, or if it doesn't affect her at all. But just that shift in teams and a different coach or programming there.
I don't think from what I've seen and what I've known, and like I said, this is all from what I've seen and known. It's not based on fact, but Laura, she doesn't really have a coach. She has a programmer, and then she adjusts it and then she makes adjustments to it, based on the programming to what she wants to do, what she wants to test herself on. Because I think what she does is she knows herself better than a coach who lives, 5,000 miles away and can't see her all the time And of course, having Christoph there, who has coaching experience, that is probably the only person, she trusts him more than anything. He's not going to sugarcoat things for her. I think that's part of it. So they do have a really good relationship with Elliot and Jamie and that crew. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's taken over that programming and they just adjusted it as is.
I want to insert Gabby into the conversation here, and I want to do it in the context of, I feel like all three of these women, one of you guys mentioned that Laura has a chip on his shoulder. I feel like all three of these women are coming into this competition with more to prove than they've ever had in their careers. Tia told me 18 months before last year's CrossFit Games that she was already looking forward to 2024 to have a chance to claim her title back. And she didn't get a chance to do it against the person who had held the title. Everything that happened in the last 3 and 4 months, and Laura and Christoph have kind of gone into this. It seems like it's almost like a scary mode of training that they're doing over there. The things that Laura is putting out on Instagram, I think, are just glimpses into this emotional, psychological beast of a warrior mindset that's probably going to emerge alongside the tremendous physical capacity that she obviously has. And in the meantime, the person who had been her best friend and training partner for however long a period of time prior to that has separated from her boyfriend, separated from her best friend, and gone into an equally potentially intimidating, focused mode. People, she podiumed at the games, but people are not giving her the type of credit for that you would get in a normal year, and understandably so, considering everything else. But Patrick and I both think that she's is as fit as ever, and also as fierce as ever. And just the three, just like what I just said about those three women, it's both exciting and also really intimidating for me to say that.
I think it's going to be a good race between those three, Tia, Laura, and Gabby. I think Gabby's the sleeper that many may not bring into the conversation when they're talking 1 and 2, but she could easily swap out in one of those spots as well, just based on where her fitness is at now. You mentioned she's more laser focused and just grinding when it comes to her workouts, her programming, her fitness level, and her focus. I think coming off the games, obviously a weird year, but she did take second place, so you do have to respect that and her ability to perform. And it was a great performance from a workout perspective there. So I'm curious how she continues to elevate herself coming off of that from the games and what she could do here. And none of these workouts, when you look at them, scream oh, Gabby's going to struggle on these. I think she's very well-rounded and very well conditioned, even when it comes to those longer endurance and running workouts and pieces. And, she could just stay relatively consistent in that top 5 range for every one of the workouts and easily, take a spot there.
Yeah, Gabby won the Capitol that had running and the Husafel. So she can run, she can move that sandbag. She always does well in long distance event. I think she won 333 back then as well at regionals, if I recall. Great runner. She's strong. She's looking confident right now online. And it's scary, right? The talent with confidence is something else.
And she's younger. So I think her ceiling is, she hasn't even reached her, top, her peak. She's got so much more time there and so much more development. So if she continues to grow, she's, pushing that spot too.
She actually had the best worst finish of those three women last year. Her worst finish was 11th. She had a 12th, Laura had a 14th, and she had 2 11th place finishes, but one of them came on the elimination event. There isn't an elimination event here, but elimination events are always a little bit random. And if that's your worst finish, I usually don't count. There was a year BKG had all top 20 finishes, except he was 21st and missed the cut on a clean and jerk sprint ladder by 0.2 of a second. I'm not counting that against him as he didn't have it on the clean and jerk ladder. So, everything about Gabby on and off the floor is really pointing towards her being as much in the fight against these two women as she's ever been in the past. The only other person who beat her at the Rogue Invitational last year was Emma Lawson, who's not in the field. And so this looks like a pretty solid top three. PC, I think you may have one other thing you want to add there, but then I want to open it up and say, is there a chance that anyone else podiums, or is this kind of like three people fighting for those podium spots and then a pretty compelling race behind that for the rest of the top 10?
Well, before we move on that last point, like I've been warning people about Gabby. Like she's kind of, that at any point she'd break out. I mean, I know it was kind of, we talked about for the games when I picked her to finish second. Granted, she finished second, but it was without Laura and some other athletes in the field. But I think if you look at this list of athletes, outside of Tia, Gabby is probably the most complete athlete in this field. In terms of you can't name something where she's obviously weak in. I mean, with Laura, it's like deficit handstands and then maybe some longer distance running. Gabby, like you said, is an excellent runner, but she's just solid across the board. And, a good example of that, as you look at her games, she didn't win a single event, but yet she had consistent top fives. I mean, just as someone who on the track and field event, she had a better score than Emily Rolfe did. She finished fourth. Emily Rolfe finished sixth. Now, in track and field, you would think someone like Emily Rolfe, especially with that time mile, that Emily Rolfe would probably beat her in that. But it just shows you how well-rounded Gabby is, and that she took her lessons that she learned from Laura, and now she's moving on and she's taking those lessons learned, and now she's becoming her own athlete. And it's bound to happen whenever you have something like that. When you have two athletes, where you have like a teacher and a mentor and a mentee, at some point, they overtake them, especially if that teacher is really good at what they do, which Laura is. So, but to answer Brian's question, and I'm sure you guys will answer. Me personally, I don't think so. I think it's those three.
Yeah, and after looking at the workouts, I also wouldn't change that top three. We could easily have a different order. Like I still like all three of these options that we have, whether it's Tia, Laura, Gabby, we have literally all three of the options possible could happen.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Gabby finishes above Laura, or Laura all of a sudden wins, and I mean, these to me are in a different tier. Normally, Tia is a tier above everyone else. But because those other two might not lose ground on as many workouts, they stay relevant for more of the competition. And if there was some sort of event that someone, loses a lot of points, like something like an elimination style or a heavy lift, if you miss your lift or something like that, that opens the door for, these athletes to take over. So, we don't know what's left to get programmed. But to me, regardless of what's left, I like these three at the top.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I would say these three are kind of in their own league for first, second, and third. And then between fourth and 10th is kind of up for grabs and can be any order, to be honest. I think it's just going to depend on, like Carolyn mentioned, if there's an elimination style workout and you bomb out early, that affects your points and can move you from 4th to 8th or 9th. If there's a heavy lift and you miss your lift, then you're out. Or even that back squat workout, if they're struggling on the squats and take a lower finish on that one, and everyone else is just consistently able to stay in that top 10-ish or upper half, then that will pull you, out of contention for one of those like 4, 5, and 6 spots. So I think for me, like you have your 1, 2, 3, and then maybe 4 to 10 are very much up for grabs there. And then we'll talk more about like 11 through 20th, but definitely 4 through 10 could be a mix of any of our orders that we have.
I got one fun question before we switch into that 4 through 10 gear. There's 9 events there. You can answer more than 6 or 6 or less event wins for Tia and Laura combined. So if they got to win 7, 8, or 9, or 6 or less.
I think there's 6 and less.
I think there's 7, 8, and 9.
I think it's around that number between the both of them.
Yeah.
I think that's a close number to. I'm gonna say
7, 8,
6.
or 9.
Yeah, I mean, I think Gabby wins one. I think Alex Kazan will win one. And then there'll be someone. I mean, someone like Manon or Ariel. They're more. They have a possibility to win an event. I don't think it's automatic like Laura. The ones that Laura are winning are the ones that Tia's not winning.
You might have like in the past, like some like Spiegel or someone that's like super, super strong.
Yeah.
Alexys keeping the door open for a clean sweep.
Yeah, just sweep. Well, they are number 1 and 2 in all-time wins.
And you said Gabby didn't win a single event, but she could stay relevant up there. So it could just be Laura and Tia swapping back and forth, and then Gabby's just staying relevant there.
And quite frankly, that's the reason why I don't think that Gabby can beat either of them, is because she's not winning events. And whether you're finishing 1st or 20th, or actually, you're probably not finishing 20th if you're winning events. But if winning events goes a long way relative to your closest competitors up and down the table. Anyway, Tia, Laura, and Gabby, it should be a hell of a battle. Like I said, they all got a ton to prove, and they all are just incredible athletes to watch. Super disciplined for a long time to have the fitness that they have. Looking at the group of athletes that we all kind of have in that next tier, everyone has Alex Kazan in there. Everyone has Ariel Low. Actually, we all have Ariel Low in that 5th. Everyone has Matty Sturt in there. Danielle Brandon's in the top 10 for everyone. There's some others that bounce around that we'll talk about in a second, but I see a pretty consistent ranking for Gazan and Lowen, with the exception of PC having Brooke Wells in 4. We basically have them 4, 5, 5, 6, and 4, 5. I just want to kind of open it up to what makes either Alex Kazan or Ariel Lowen so great and such a likely top 5 finisher at Rogue.
I don't think they have many holes.
I think they're consistency queens. Yeah, they're just consistency queens. I think maybe their worst workout will be number 1, and then after that they're good for they're great for the weekend. Their pulling strength is exceptional, and Rogue tends to be pretty pulling and pressing heavy. So I think just there alone, they're not going to lose much ground on a lot of those maybe higher skill or heavier workouts, just because of how consistent they are across, the board there, from a gymnastics and a pulling strength or upper body in general piece for both Alex and Ariel there.
Yeah, and Alex, she struggled a couple times at a competition with her snatch, but she snatched 200 pounds. I've seen her do it. It's not like she doesn't have the strength, and I still don't think that snatch at 160. She can separate herself on the ring muscle up there to make up for maybe a few seconds on the snatch. I think those two athletes, Alex and Ariel, are well-rounded. They're seasoned. They're smart. They're going to play to their strengths and weaknesses in workouts. And last year, I think Alex had ripped her hands in one of the events. I think the monkey bar one, if I recall. And, as long as you're healthy, and we don't know how people are going into these competitions, as long as they're healthy and they're not ripping their hands on the log muscle ups or whatnot or other apparatus, to me, they're the next wave coming. They're just not as strong as that top tier, but they're right. They're just behind. And I think Haley Adams, to me, she's
hold on to Haley Adams for a second. Let's finish with these shows. I want to talk about Haley.
I left her out for a reason, so we could focus on her after.
PC, you want to add anything about Alex and Ariel?
No, I think they're just well-rounded. They're Ariel's. Every time I see Ariel, she impresses me, especially her strength and resolve. And she's probably a little bit more well-rounded than Alex. She's not as strong as Alex, but she's more well-rounded, especially with her running ability and some of her gymnastics. Obviously, she's a better handstand walker, but and she's a better at snatches. And she's just a grinder, just like Alex. So they're almost interchangeable in that. And I think they would agree that too, because anytime you see those two, they're going against each other, whether it be in semifinals or any type of competition. They're usually right there on top. They're really close to each other. So it's just it just comes down to programming with them. I mean, if you see a lot of pulling and pressing, Alex will probably have the advantage in that.
Well,
I feel like I know she's not competing this weekend, but like Alexys, Ariel, and Alex are pretty similar.
And Emma Lawson.
And they're like where they're at, where their tier is, and just like their strengths as athletes. So those would be like the three, I'm like they're consistently, within that 4 or 5, even, or I guess now 4, 5, and 6 range, and could be interchangeable depending on the weekend.
When I was going through these picks, I mean, just to the thing we talked about earlier, Alex Kazan did win 2 events last year out of 9 at the Rogue Invitational, so she's got that home run potential. Ariel Lowen had 3 finishes of 15th or worse. They were 15th, 15th, and 16th. It was on the long running with the sandbag event. It was on the heavy back squat and the heavy deadlift. So there are definitely things that show up at Rogue that can cost her at the competition. But she's also improved every year that she's been there. She started out at 13th, went to 10th, went to 8th, and all of us think that she's going to improve again. She's one of these women that's just adding to this list of women throughout the years of CrossFit that are getting older and getting better. And she did respond to our post and said that she would be ecstatic to have this finish. I don't think that she would probably consider the Rogue Invitational to be her strongest competition of the year. She's obviously had better finishes at other competitions, but she doesn't really let anything phase her in competition. A bad event won't get her down. And I just think she's getting better, which is why I put her up here. I do think that I was surprised that you guys all also had her at 5th. I think it's a little bit of a risky pick. I think it might be a little safer to have her 6, 7, something like that. But I do think she'll improve on her 8th from last year. Let's talk about Haley Adams, because you guys have her 5th. I have her 7th. PC has her 11th. So I'll let you two talk about why you have her so high, and then Patrick kind of respond with what he's concerned about when it comes to Haley compared to a top 10 finish.
To me, Haley has been one of the most consistent American female athletes that we've seen in the CrossFit space. Every year at the games, she's towards the top. At Rogue, she competed a few years ago, and she was still, towards the top. You look at these workouts right now, I mean, you can't tell me that GHD skier and pegboard workout wouldn't be good for her. That running workout wouldn't be good for her. Just couple one or two events that she may struggle on with the weight, but other than that girl is fit. Like she's extremely fit. Her gymnastics is probably one of the best for the females in the sport, and she's a phenomenal runner. So when you have those home run abilities in competitions, she can have a dead last place in a lifting event. Like let's say she struggles with that back squat, she's still relevant towards the top, because most of the other workouts she's able to make up for that hole, which we've seen Laura come back from a dead last place in a strict parallel deficit workout and still be relevant. So I think Haley is always solid in any competition. I've yet to see her really do very, very bad. I think 2021 was her worst finish, 11th place or something like that, if I remember, at the games, 10th or maybe 9th to 11th, somewhere in there. But other than that, she's fit.
Anything to add, Lex, or should we give it to PC and tell us why she's going to struggle?
No, I think just seeing the workouts, you can't tell me that she's not going to finish in a lot of top 5s in those. She may even have an event win when it comes to something a bit longer. I think she'll also do really well in that thruster workout with the rowing and bar muscle ups, just because she's consistent. And then the only one that I guess we don't know 2 of the events. So if there is a max lift, there might be some type of struggle there, depending on what that lift may be. But to Carolyn's point, because she does so well at the other events, I think it's not going to, impact her or hurt her significantly through the entirety of 9 workouts there.
I will add, she did struggle with her double unders this year at semifinals. I don't know how it'll be with the heavy rope. It seemed like she picked up my habit of being a little bit crooked.
That's right.
But she has great overhead strength
Yes.
and can handstand walk faster than anyone in the field. She's, you know, right behind, I would say, Danielle Brandon on handstand walk. So even that one is still good if she's fixed her heavy double under. I don't know how that will be.
Carolinitis. The Carolinitis.
Carolina. Yeah, she did finish 35th in that
Lynn
event.
Lynn throws this comment up here. I don't know. Maybe it's a lot heavier for her. Event 2 with the snatches. Event 3 with the squat. Event 5 with the press. I'm hesitant on Haley. PC, you're hesitant on Haley too. Why?
Well, I've created another tier, and I call it the monostructural athlete tier. And it's Sydney Wells, Haley Adams, Emily Rolfe. And if you notice, I have them, they're grouped together right there at like 10 through 12. And right now, if I just based on what I know and what I've seen, I would put Sydney ahead of those three just based on Sydney's strength component. She's getting stronger. Sydney's getting stronger. And then on top of it, Sydney has approached, since she didn't make the games, she has approached road. She's been singularly focused on road. So she's been her training, everything's for her to peak for road. Whereas everyone else has already gotten to their peak due to games. So they've actually they're having a restart. And I'm not saying like Haley or Emily Rolfe is out of shape. They're not. They're the one few athletes that probably take a 2 weeks off and still crush any workout, where some athletes will have to slowly get back into it. But I think Sydney is a different type of, I think what you're going to see is an evolution of Sydney where she is implementing a lot of those strengths that Haley and Emily don't have. And we've kind of seen some of that in some of the competitions that she's done. Me and Brian were able to see it with a heavy thruster at reps ahead. And she handled that barbell pretty well. Whereas I think someone like Emily Rolfe and Haley Adams with the heavy thruster would struggle. So that's why I have Sydney. And that's one reason why I kind of dropped Haley is kind of what Lynn brought up. There's a lot of things there that I'm not saying they're going to finish last in, but they're not going to be a top 10 finish, for every first place. I mean, Haley her comeback this year was amazing, but however, it doesn't take, she did finish 6th at that semifinal. Now it was a stacked semifinal, but part of why she struggled at semifinal was she had a 35th, and I think the last workout she had a 15th. Now, granted, she crushed the snatch ladder, which was really impressive to see, the squat snatch ladder. But yeah, that's just one reason why. I just like you hardly ever see monostructural athletes do well at road. Haley being the lone exception in 2021, where she won just about every workout that had some of the chippers and some of the monostructural things that you referenced.
Haley has an interesting track record at Rogue. She competed there only twice. In 2020, it was online. In 2021, it was a live competition in Texas. She has one finish that was 7th, 8th, 9th, or 10th. She's almost always 6th or better or outside the top 10. And she's just got these highs and lows throughout competition. I think we'll expect it again, but those have yielded finishes of 8th and 5th so far. Like Patrick said, she came back and she was pretty good again this year, kind of finishing right in the same tier as we always seem to see her finish at these competitions, which is basically 4 through 8, more or less. So I think there's a good chance that she'll be up there again. She clearly has something special in terms of a mindset to compete really hard and not over exceed expectations relative to her strength, which is unusual in the sport of CrossFit. You usually need to be strong enough to be good enough. She's been an outlier in that regard. She'll take a bottom 5 finish almost for sure on the back squat if you see another heavy implement as well. And it still isn't going to be enough to keep her out of this hunt for that 6, 7, 8 range, in my opinion. I wanted to ask you guys about Danielle. We all have her here kind of in the middle. She's a wild card. So I'm just kind of curious of where you guys assess her right now. She's kind of been talking about being in a funk. She seems to be distracted with things that are not fitness related, but we know that she's always in the gym training and doing whatever she needs to be doing. She regularly shows up and competes fairly well. How well is a little bit of an unknown. Do you? I
I
mean,
think
we
that's
have
why
her
we
8th,
have her
8th,
in the
and 9th.
middle. I think that's
Do
why
you-
you have her in the
Alexys,
middle. Like
yeah.
you just don't know. You know, there's going to be good events for her that, you know, her skill and fitness are going to shine in. I think that handstand walk is one of them. And then it just depends where she's at for the other ones. Now, you know, this obviously we made these lists before all of the workouts were released, but again, it's just kind of like a you don't know, and especially going into Rogue, and we've seen before in previous years of how heavy Rogue can be. That can affect her as well. Like we've seen it on the back squat workout, or even a max lift there. So it also depends on how her performance can be across those ones. But I still think, you know, in those general CrossFit style workouts, like the ring muscle up one with the moderate snatch, she's going to perform well and stay relevant within that middle of the pack, or upper middle of the pack, I should say, in that group. So she's still really fit, and still will perform well in comparison to the other girls around her. It's just some of those other factors, and then also where her head's at when she goes into the weekend.
Patrick, what do you think the best possible finish for Danielle is against this field?
Against this field, probably 6. What we saw last year with DB, she was healthy. That was the healthiest we've seen DB at Rogue in the previous 2 years. And she just made the switch to coaching. She seemed to be in a really good place. And she seemed like she was in a really good place the whole season. And then, you know, she had her best finish. What she finished at Rogue last year? 7th. You know, and she finished that last day with some impressive finishes. She had I believe, what was it, an 8th, a 1st, and a 4th to end the weekend that Sunday. She's that's the type of athlete she is. I mean,
She did get. I think she got a favorable change to one of the events. To be fair,
sure, yeah, but I mean, she went out and performed, and that's the most important thing with DB is like she can't have all the outside stuff bothering her. I think you referenced it in the article, Brian, is like, you know, she's admitted that she's been in a funk, you know, and then all this drama that's been going on outside of competition, you know, and you know how that affects her. I think she'll be fine. I think because she'll be at, you know, in Scotland, she'll be around a lot of people that do like her, that are friends with her, that to support her, that she'll be fine. But at the same time, when an athlete says that, hey, I'm not really feeling it, it's hard for me to train, I'm just in a funk, it causes some alarm.
there are 2 women on this list that both of your sets of rankings have significantly higher, I would say, than mine. I'm just going to say this. Based on their previous performances at Rogue, the picks that I have make a lot more sense. These are Brooke Wells and Paige Semenza. Obviously, Brooke has had some amazing success at the CrossFit Games. Paige Semenza is coming off her best year ever. But last year, Semenza had a 3rd place on the dual, and then a 9th, 2 10ths, and a bunch of finishes in the bottom 5. She placed 14th overall. Brooke has not competed at Rogue since the online year. She's been 7th and 10th in the first 2 years, and she's obviously had injury and some up and downs in her career since then, missing the games a couple years ago to semifinal. So Brooke Wells, Paige Semenza, open floor. You guys both have them inside the top 10. Or I guess you guys have them 11th and 7th, and Patrick has them 4th and 8th. Why are you guys so high on those 2?
I find Paige Semenza is just a sleeper. Like people don't expect her to do well, but she's just very athletic and elite in her athleticism. So depending on what events haven't been released yet, and also the events that now have been released, I still think that she will still fall within, you know, this mid-range, and, you know, can be anywhere from 8th where PC has her to 11th where we have her. And she's proven that, and you know, you'll just hear like people are surprised that when she does so well at a workout, and it's like, no, she's been there, she has all of the experience, and she's relatively consistent across when it comes to those things. So I still think just based on her athleticism and where she's at, she'll finish somewhere around here. She's very adaptable and has really great, you know, awareness of herself in space. And I think that helps in some of those rogue style events. I'll let Carolyn add, and then she could talk to Brooke Wells.
I think Paige is well-rounded. I was very impressed by her running this year at the games. I thought her mile time was very good. I think she's continuously getting better, even though she is, I think she's in her 30s now, maybe 32, 31, 32, somewhere around there. The ring muscle up workout, I think that's a good workout for her. Yeah, I think she's just consistent. She doesn't have any major holes. She's a very, like on the Olympic lifts, she's very strong. So I just think that she's finding herself as an athlete and just has gotten smarter with her strategies as of late. And I won't be surprised to see her as high as, you know, what we've put her, and maybe possibly even crack that top 10 with some of these events. And just not having that like bottom tier finish. I just don't see her. Like, she's got a great squat. I don't think any of the weights are going to stop her. And she's actually, you know, for not being a gymnast, for being a hockey player, she has very good gymnastics as well. She's always done well in ring muscle up workouts. So, yeah. And then her running has been more on par lately towards the middle top. And then Brooke, I think Brooke, I don't know if maybe just seeing her a little bit more with JR and maybe getting a little bit more mentorship there and having access to some of the, you know, the equipment that's there. I think she's healthy now, I'm assuming. You know, Brooke is strong. Like, she's got a strong deadlift, strong hinging. Her gymnastics has always been great on her hands for handstand walking. I would say maybe the chest to bar was one of her weaknesses back then. Like I didn't think that she did as well on those type of events, but I don't see anything
chest
right
to
now.
bar pull-ups almost never show up at the Rogue Invitational.
They don't show up in many competitions, I find, anymore. Like,
well,
I feel like they either go to bar muscle up or ring.
The one that I just was at this weekend had 96 weight best chest to bar pull-ups.
Nasty. But yeah, no, I think she'll do well at these events, and Brooke's a good runner too. So I think.
By the way, if there's any competition programmers out there, chest to bar pull-ups is the #1 gymnastics indicator of overall fitness in a competition from the rudimentary testing that we've done. So it's okay to program it. Anyway, yeah, I think that Brooke Wells and Paige Simmons will be fun to watch. I think if Brooke has a chance to make the top 10, I would be surprised if Paige did personally. On the other side of things, we have a general scenario that I don't want to go through the show without talking about it. We mentioned it at the onset that this competition is taking place in Europe. The European athletes, the Australian athletes from all over the world have become used to traveling long distances, acclimating to new cultures, time zones, temperatures, etc., and competing at the highest level of the sport. The North American athletes, some of them have done that, some of them have rarely done that, but you know, I look at an athlete like Emma Tall, who is an absolute assassin at semifinals when she doesn't have to travel very far. She gets to compete kind of in familiar territory. And I think that she is, I mean, I have her 9th. You guys have her 10th. Patrick, you have her 13th, which I think is a little confusing to me. I think she actually has a sleeper to finish even higher than that potential this weekend. Do you think that the quote unquote home court advantage will factor in for some of the Europeans?
I think so. I think also having fans from where you're at will help as well. It's funny that you say that because Carolyn and I came up with this list together, but before I sent my like initial at glance list, I had Emma Tall really high. And she's kind of like the one that I would consider the dark horse to finish, you know, potentially higher there. I had her exceptionally high, but not Laura, Tia, Gabby, but I'll say it was pretty close to those. So I think she does have potential, and now seeing the workouts out and based on where her strengths are, like I don't see her struggling much anywhere. So if she is, you know, well rested, she doesn't have as significant of a travel or needs to get acclimated to a certain climate or location, I think she could potentially be a sleeper that finishes higher.
Yes, Alexys had her as, I think, 4th place in the original one, and I'm the reason. I guess I'll take the blame on that one for bringing her. I just went change because Lex sent me her list, and then I had the final say of moving a couple things around. But to me, yeah, I don't think she's a phenomenal runner in comparison to some of those girls that are above her on the list.
She just impresses me a lot. Like,
her strength is
very impressive.
Yeah, her strength, her pulling capacity is, right up there with the best in the world.
I mean, look, she had at the semifinal this last year, she finished 3rd on the running clean and jerk in Europe, and she had 2 event wins with Laura and Gabby in the field. There are data points from recent competition history, the most recent competition history that's relevant, because Tier Cup is an outlier, that suggests that she can be competitive with some of the top 5 women here.
I think for me, it was just seeing her at the Wadapalooza. I didn't feel like her in some of the workouts. I felt like her fitness wasn't as on par as some of the other ones.
We're chalking it up to jet lag, her and BKG.
And I know that Wadapalooza means absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of things. And it was a fun competition with some great money on the line for them. And, maybe she was jet lagged a little bit, but I just wasn't as blown away there as I normally am. Because normally I would be pretty close to Lex, where she had her around the 4th. Maybe I would have been around the 6 to 8. 6 to 8. But I think Emma Tall is like a top 10 athlete at the games, like right around that 10th place. And I think, so to me, I just went around that here, knowing it's a similar field as the games here. But yes, she could very, very well get closer to where Lex had her.
I'll say if she finishes higher, then.
Well, we know that you had her high, so if she based top 5, we're giving you credit for that.
I'll take the blame. It was me.
The last athlete that we all have in the top 10 that we haven't talked about yet is Matty Sturt. Open forum. Matty Sturt hardly ever gets talked about as one of the top 10 women in the world. It seems to me like her and Jay Crouch have just really ascended in the last 18 to 24 months. Open floor to talk about what impresses you about Matty Sturt.
When I put her down at 7th, then I started thinking about it. What has she done besides this games and this past season to deserve to be at such a high, rank so high? Because we haven't seen her in the game since 2018. We hadn't seen her in much competition outside of Australia. So the data points are very, very small because she's competing. But now, granted, she's competing against like Tia's, the Ellie Turners, some of the best in Australia. Now, granted, this year she didn't have to. Ellie was hurt. Tia was in the U.S. So she was pretty much, she pretty much dominated. However, I think that what kind of determined that for me is just her new take. She's a changed athlete than I remember seeing her in 2018. And I think a lot of that could be attributed to Proven and to Shane and Tia. And I think what we're seeing is kind of like with Gabby and Laura is kind of maybe a similar thing where Maddie's kind of being taken under the wing or Tia. So that's why I kind of leveled her up just based off of that, not based off any single performance, because I really haven't seen much outside of the games.
I think from seeing her in the past, she's small, but she's so strong and powerful too. So I think that's what impresses me a lot with her, and where I think she could perform well here. Just at her her strength is exceptional for her size. But also like she's just well conditioned. I think very much very well rounded, very strong, and it plays to a good strength here at Rogue when it comes to their workouts and their style of programming.
I would say that for me, this was kind of the risky pick that I made, putting her all the way up at 6. There's, like Patrick said, there's not like clear data that I can point to for that. I recognize CJ's comment here. Sometimes it seems like they need to do a comp a couple times before they can get comfortable and do well. And so she wouldn't necessarily have that going for her. But I feel good. I just feel good about Matty Sturt and Jay Crouch. And sometimes, you can just ride a good gut feeling about some athletes and make a pick on that. So I'm excited to see what she does. She did. I mean, she like Patrick said, the competition at the semifinal this year wasn't necessarily elite, but she took care of business. She won 4 of the 6 events there. The only hit she took was on the snatch ladder. She's similar to Haley Adams in this regard, where she might not have the heaviest snatch in the field, but high percentage moving for reps she can still do. I do think she'll have a couple bad finishes here, but like I said about Haley, you can have a couple bad finishes and still do well at Rogue. The field is just that good that almost everyone has a couple bad finishes. Even Laura Horvath has bad finishes in the years that she wins the competition. That's kind of all the athletes that we had in the top 10. Looking at the bottom half of this, I think I'm just going to kind of open it up to you guys to pick and choose athletes that you'd like to feature or talk about. Some of the ones that I've seen in the comments were about Manon. She's like the queen of qualifying for Rogue through the qualifier. Taylor Williamson has been getting a lot of conversation in the run up to this. Danny Spiegel has showed out at Rogue on select events in the past. So anyone who wants to start, maybe Lex, if there's an athlete down there, and then we'll go to Carolyn and then Patrick.
So a couple. One, I'm going to say I had Taylor Williamson higher than we have her now too. So that was a change. I think she has potential to do really well here. I know she's more known on the team side, and she took some time off, like pursuing her, I forget, PA, I think.
PT.
Or PT. So I think, it'll be interesting to see, but she is like a Rogue challenge and Rogue athlete to the core when it comes to just like her strength and ability. And I think can do really well at some of those events. I don't think she's, that top tier elite like you would see Gabby, Tia, Laura, and even Alex, Ariel, and Haley, but she has potential to crack the top 10, depending on how well she performs at those workouts that we could see as her strengths. Just her raw strength and talent ability there. So that's what I would highlight from a potential.
I want to give Patrick a chance to add a little thing that he found about Taylor Williamson as an individual competitor.
Yeah, a year ago, right around this time, Taylor actually did compete in an individual competition down under championships, and guess where she finished?
Did she get first?
Nope.
Oh.
She finished 4th, but the people that finished ahead of her, Matty Sturt, Annika Greer, and Gracie Walton.
Okay.
Now the people she beat included Daisy McDonald, Amy Kringle, Julia Hannaford, Emily DeRoy, and Marnie Sykes. So these are all athletes that either outside of Marnie Sykes and Annika have competed at the games as individuals. And that was Taylor Williamson just going there, not to win, just going there because Proven was, sponsoring down under championships, and she threw her name in the hat, kind of similar to what she did this year, where she was kind of talked into doing the workouts with Sydney Wells, and she, I think, finished top 5 in 3 of the 4 workouts, so she does have some individual data points. And if you look back to that 2020 season, she did finish 30th in the Open. And remember, that was the year that Andrea Nisler also did really well in the Open. And she actually, because they got rid of the team competition, she competed as an individual online and finished, I think, 9th or 10th. So, the argument's never been made that Taylor Williamson and Andrea Nisler aren't good enough individual competitors. They just chose not to be.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, the one last thing I'll add about Taylor is that same Patrick and I visited East Nashville in February of 2023, and that's the time that I talked to Tia. I also talked to Taylor, and she was just kind of having a big shift in her life and trying to figure out how to find a new balance as she had kind of more time available than she'd previously had. Well, we're 18 or 20 months on from there, and it just kind of feels to me like she's figured out a new routine, and it probably means getting more sleep. It probably means having a better eating cycle. And you guys as competitive athletes will know this, and anyone who listened to Matt Fraser's Ask Me Anything recently will also know that that makes a big difference in terms of what athletes can do, especially later in their career. If your sleep and nutrition is suddenly becoming, just 5% better, sometimes your output in competition can jump up by a significant portion.
And then you factor in, she has all the facilities and things that come with being part of Proven, and she's at any point, she doesn't have to worry about someone opening up the gym or doing this. I mean, she has everything that she needs by being associated with Proven as well. So I think that helps too.
Carolyn, athlete from the kind of bottom half of our list here that you want to highlight.
Spiegel is kind of hard, just because I just don't know where she's at with her training right now. If she's just more enjoying, she's a home run hitter type of athlete. With these events that are out right now, I'm not sure which one. Maybe the back squat one could be a very, very good one. She's great on her hands and is probably the strongest squatter in the field if I were to guess. So that one should be good. Like, she's hot or cold type of athlete, but just wasn't sure what her training has been like as of recently. Who else here? Mano, I mean, we talked about her a few years ago. I was very impressed by her. I think in 2022 at the Rogue Invitational, I hadn't seen as much of her, and then I saw her there, and I was impressed by her there. So she could finish higher. Dana Paran is one of the stronger athletes in the field. I think recently she pulled like a 450-ish deadlift, like from sumo, and she's a previous Olympic lifter. So I think in some of the events, like the running won't be very good for her, but I just want to shout her out. Taylor Howe is the only one I don't know as much of. So to me, has she competed on a team at the games, or just like always very close? Because I feel like I've known her name for many, many years. She just hasn't quite cracked the games for like.
No, I mean, she's if you're looking at like credentials, she has by far the least credentials. Her and Dana do of anyone in this field. I think her most notable finish was 13th at Wadapalooza in 2022. So if you're not like studying the depths of the field at the smaller competitions, she's definitely an athlete that you wouldn't necessarily be too well aware of.
I would love to see Emma do great, especially being from Ireland and then being close to Scotland. I'm assuming it's close to Scotland or relatively close. And probably having like a home field advantage, being one of the closer athletes to Scotland. I don't know where her health is at, how her training's been going. I'm not sure how many years she still has left competing. So would love to see her have a strong finish there. And Amanda, I mean, with her kid, with her family, she wasn't really expecting this. And not sure where her shoulder is at, but she seems to be more cautious now in her training. So she still has some home run abilities. I just wasn't sure where to put her.
Well, Patrick, slim pickings after that.
Oh, Rolf.
I know.
We talk about Rolf. Rolf had amazing games. Traditionally, Rogue was heavier, so we put her a little bit lower than that. I mean, the girl is incredibly fit. She's got great gymnastics and monostructural. She's great on machines and running, not just running. But we just put her a little bit lower for Rogue because it was Rogue. Nothing against her.
Yeah. I think what I probably won't really just highlight some quick things about some of these athletes. Dana, obviously, you brought up some great things in terms of her being a power output Olympic lifter. She made the switch to Krieger training in Norway this past year, and she's seen significant increase in her physical fitness, just raw fitness. And if you know anything about Norwegians in that camp, what they normally do is they kick out CrossFitters like the Kristen Holtas, the Sahara Kayas, the Matilda Garnas, the Lena Richters, those athletes who are just good at fitness. And I think that was a smart move by her, because that's one thing she had to shore up. And she, again, last year, you brought up Taylor Williamson being kind of like that rogue challenge athlete, which, Prevo, Carolyn, you're really familiar with. She won 2 of the challenges last year in 2023, which included, I think she won, try to remember here, let me look it up, a heavy grace and the triple challenge last year. So
I mean, she's winning a lot this year too. So
yeah, she's won a few this year.
It's very impressive. Like,
yeah,
there's literally no holes there.
mm-hmm.
She's been dealing with some asthma issues this past year, so she's trying to figure that out. So if she has that figured out, I know that was a big factor for her in like running events and long distance events and just figuring out her breathing and stuff like that. So if that is more under control for her, she could do better as well.
Yeah, and when last I spoke to her, she has figured that out. She is on medication for it too. So, someone was Emma McQuaid. It's really weird because we talked about Paige Semenza. There's no other athlete that has made the jumps, especially in her game season, that has improved her finish every year since 2019, since she first appeared in the games. She's improved her finish, highlighted by her 8th place this year. There's been no other athlete that's been able to accomplish that in that amount of time. And so that's just, I think, that's why one reason why I love Paige is because she's that hard-nosed, athlete, that former athlete. I have a soft spot for like former athletes because they know about the grind, especially when you throw chippers in there. Like when I think of Paige, I just think of something, same with you, Carolyn, is, someone just grinds, won't back down.
That's how she was as a hockey player too. Like she was that grinder type player, that hard worker for the Ohio State. So like it's not surprising to see that work ethic and that suffering and has transferred over to the CrossFit side of things. Yeah. She started her career on a team and then went individual, I believe.
Mm-hmm. And then conversely, on the other side, it's like Emma McQuaid over the last 2 years has kind of seen a decline. And I know it's been because of injuries and other factors. And I don't know if you had the chance, but Peter from Coffee Pods and Wads kind of followed her around to the games this year. And she kind of hinted like she was pretty much like this was kind of, she's at the end of her career. And, and I don't think it's because she doesn't like competing at CrossFit. Maybe she just feel like she's not fit enough to be up there, which is a shame because 2 years ago, she'd finished pretty high in Rogue and actually won an event at Rogue. And she's obviously, when she's on and she's 100% in the CrossFit, she's probably she's a top 12, top 15 athlete. But I just feel like she's on the back end, with Scotland being the birthplace of golf, she's playing the back 9, whereas, someone like Paige is still on the front 9.
Had to work that in there, didn't you?
Of course.
I understood it. That was good. That's good.
Thank you. Tying it all in. But yeah.
I got another fun. Oh, go ahead, Patrick.
Go ahead. Oh no. One thing we didn't really talk about is like is like the 2 events that we don't know about. I told you, Brian, I still think that it's going to be, obviously, you're going to be in Scotland, the birthplace of the Highland Games. There has to be something that's Highland Games inspired. And of course, they're going to have the stones up there. We've seen the stones at many of the past competitions. They have the roots there in Scotland. If you look at the Instagram, they keep on highlighting the stones. I see something, maybe it might be something with the stones were for the athletes. We've yet to see the athletes do anything with the stones. I think what better way to do it than in Scotland? And if that's the case, then you can start seeing then someone like Danny, Taylor, even Emma Tall with those she has very long arms. They're going to do really well in workouts like that.
I got another fun question for you guys. Do you think it's more likely that the athletes all get a custom kilt and bagpipe or a set of golf clubs?
Kilt. Getting the kilt.
Year two is the golf clubs.
I agree with PC. I think year 2 the golf clubs. The kilt that you saw the stitching on Instagram. I mean, it'd be cool to get if they got both of them.
Yeah.
I think the golf clubs will be way too tough to bring home.
It's road. They can make it.
But they don't know if you're lefty or righty.
I wouldn't think they'd be clubs you'd actually use. I would envision like an old wooden driver and a little copperhead putter that is engraved with Rogue Invitational and your name or something like that. But it's become kind of like a fun tradition at Rogue. They always do something special that leans into the place where the competition is happening. So I just wanted to throw that in there at the end.
We're only getting kilts.
Yeah, another option could be, Scotland's known for the Scottish warriors, and in medieval times, maybe they give them all like swords. But can you imagine going through customs with that?
No, the MacFest used to do it, didn't they?
Yeah. I think Daniel Brandon has like a collection of swords now.
If they give them swords or anything like that, maybe they'll also pay to ship them home.
Yeah, probably.
Well, I think that was a pretty thorough evaluation of the field. Like we said at the beginning, the entire slate of athletes here are incredibly impressive and accomplished just to make it into this field. If you missed the conversation early on, the first 30 or 40 minutes, we talked about the programming that was released today a little bit. And then we spent a decent amount of time, focusing on kind of the big three, Tia, Laura, and Gabby. I think that is the headline for this, but I hope that it doesn't swallow up all of the other great athletes and athletic performances that'll happen there this weekend. All four of us will be in Scotland. The ladies are traveling and will arrive sometime on Wednesday from the States and Canada, and Patrick and I will make our way over from different places in Europe on Thursday. So it'd be good to see you guys in person, and thank you guys for taking the time to put your heads together for this list and come on and share some of your insights.
Anytime.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
All right, we're going to let you guys go, get back to your lives and your training over there, and we'll see you in a couple of days.
See you soon.
Yep. Safe travels.
Bye, guys. That's like we said, there's an article up on B.Friendly Fitness that details some of the stats and highlights for each athlete we were talking about. So check that out, especially if you're considering, making your own picks or something like that. And you can also see our picks on Instagram. Feel free to drop some comments there. It's always fun to see what you guys think as well. Patrick worked really hard on this article with the pictures. There's some incredible, dude. The picture you got of Sydney Wells from that picture right there, like, man, the colors on that are just incredible.
I thought it was really cool. It's one of my favorite pictures, and I've told Sydney that all the time. And yeah, what I've tried to do is whenever we, with it being Rogue, trying to grab pictures of like memorable moments that I have from Rogue. Obviously, some of the rookies I don't have that, but it was really cool reaching back in 2019 and finding this one of Brooke. And you remember this event?
That's the mule.
The mule, yeah. The mule. That was
I did that workout that year. I think I used the women's weights for the deadlifts, but that was an epic battle between Matt and Pat and Matt. Yeah, Fraser and Bellner, and just a classic Rogue style event down in Dirty.
The infamous no rep that my buddy Paul gave Matt, which was a legit no rep. It was legit no rep. And that was a fun year for me because that was one of the last judging events I judged at, and I'm glad to go out and to be selected to be a Rogue judge is something that.
Dude, I heard a stat about the Rogue judges that the average turnover year to year is 1, and that the wait list to be a judge at Rogue is over 1,000.
Yep. That's the one thing is like, man, they treat you so well. It's like even that first year. So I mean, obviously I know all the judges there now, and it was just amazing. And just being the way of being treated. And I remember for that event there, I got to judge Chandler. And at the time, me and Chandler were both captains in the Guard or in the Army, and we developed a relationship. And here I was able to judge him on that. And
did I ask you what your rank is now?
Captain. Why you gotta bring up old shit? I'm working on it. 40. They said 45 more days. I don't know what that means, But that, of course, he had that epic finish where he did the baseball slide across the finish line, and then it was just so much fun. And I was actually, me and Paul ended up being on the demo team. So we had to demonstrate a couple workouts in front of the athletes. That was the most nerve-wracking thing I ever did. Luckily, it was just I had to do GHDs, so it wasn't that bad. All I had to demonstrate the ring muscle ups, and then that was also the day that was also the last thing I judged was Laura Horvath on the handstand push-ups, which
disqualified her from the competition alongside Margot Alvarez.
I didn't do anything. That wasn't me. I didn't disqualify.
That was the rogue rules that year.
Yeah.
Now that the girls are gone, especially since Carolyn's gone, since she is more privy to some of the testing, etc. I wanted to ask you if you have a favorite event after seeing the workouts come out. Let's start with that.
Oh gosh, let me pull that back up again. Because I started making my list. I was thinking about doing another PC picks, while you're off enjoying some a dream of mine tomorrow night. I was thinking about doing some PC picks, but I started making a kind of a list here of who I thought were the favorites. Obviously, you could put Tia in a bunch of them, but I'm really interested to see what they do with the Braveheart. One, I like the name, and then it says a wall walk complex. So I'm really, I hate wall walks. I love back squats. So you got two movements. You have one movement I love and one I absolutely hate. Now you make that one I absolutely hate a complex. You're going to see this could be one of those deal breakers for an athlete. I think you're going to have quite a few athletes if the complex is. I think this could be something where only maybe half the field finishes.
Yeah, depending on how aggressive they are at the time cap, I could see that. I know that the man, it's a tough slate of workouts. I really think I was trying to pick any other event, but I'm really looking forward to event number 2. I think that we spent a lot of time talking about it for a reason. It's a workout that there can be a lot of kind of shifts in the lead. Different people can flex their muscles, and I think that at first glance, that's the workout that I'm really excited to watch. Some of the others, like they mentioned, including Braveheart and Quicksand that are on this list, I think you're going to see more of the field spread out, but I think the margin for error on North Sea Tiger is small, while the demand for high level skill and mastery of some of the best movements in the sport are required in the ring muscle up and squat snatch for moderate weight, moderate load. Mm-hmm. And then hopefully there will be some of those sprints to the finish. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Now we know you keep putting it. Yeah. I also wanted to ask you do you think that we're more likely to see the dual 4 or heavy stones?
Well, I mean, I would hate for them. They did it in 2021 when they ended the competition with the dual, right? And because of that,
first year they did it, yeah.
Yeah, because of that, I mean, and I think I don't think it costed Annie Thorisdottir the top spot, but she was eliminated in that first round because of just a small error where her bag got caught up on the pedestal. I would hate for something like a simple mistake instead of fitness being the reason why someone didn't win or lost. And I think with the dual or anything with the dual, it comes down with anything like that. It comes down to not just fit. It's more about just execution more than anything, because you have so many rounds of it. I don't know. I mean, I do like the dual setups. What I don't like is the past couple of years, what we found out with the dual is like, there's always been some type of mistake or error that's kind of prolonged the event, yeah.
I think it would be, I would be okay with skipping a year on the dual at Rose.
Yes.
We've had it for 3 in a row. I think that I feel like the replicas of the Dinny stones they made are going to be used for the strongman competition, but I do think there's still a chance to lean into some kind of a stone discipline lifting event on Saturday night. And that's what I'm kind of hoping for. I feel like it would fit nicely into the programming there. And then, since the dual was the final in 2021, the last 2 years it was heavy grace, and then it was the cleanup with so we've seen barbell cycling in the final. do you think that we'll get a barbell cycling final, or do you think we're going to get something different this year?
I think you kind of have to. I mean, at the end of the day, you know what this is? This is a rogue marketing event. This is rogue products. If you didn't have an event that showcased rogue, I mean, that's why they created the money bar. You know, that's why they created these things. I mean, it's you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, hell, I mean, that's smart on Rogue to do stuff like this, to throw an event where they can market how amazing and how innovative and how cool their equipment is, and also doing it with the best athletes in the world and best strongmen in the world. So I think it has to have a barbell in it, because I mean, when you think of Rogue, you think of barbells, you know, you think of rigs. So I think it'd be a big miss on them, especially since how many workouts are you actually using a barbell in here? You're using the sear bell twice, right?
You got the squat snatch, the back squat, and the thruster back-to-back events. And then I don't think absent of event 6 and 9, I don't think you see the barbell again. So it would be, if they put it in the final, it would be 2, 3, 4, and 9. Or 6.
Yeah, and I think outside of like what we've done in the semifinals where they had like a toe to bars and a dead a heavy bag like sprint, you got to have something end with the finish line finish, and I think the best way to do that and determine that is the barbell.
Well, I'll tell you but here's my prediction for the final. I think it's going to be a hybrid of the last 2 years. 2 years ago was heavy grace. Last year they had, and I was like tripping up on saying what the workout is because it was power clean, squat cleans, clean and jerks. I think it's going to be heavy grace, but 10 reps of power clean, 10 reps of squat clean, 10 reps of clean and jerks. I'm not sure if it'll be increasing weights or not, but that's my prediction for the final this year.
I could definitely see that. I definitely could. I would also, one thing I've been doing is like going back and looking at the challenges, you know, and just seeing what's in the challenges, because sometimes, just like with CrossFit and main site, you know, sometimes, you know, Rogue will put something up there, and, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if it pops up, you know, in the Rogue workout. What better way to test it, you know? But yeah.
Oh, that was a pretty good show. I saw this from CJ. Carolyn and Alex were great, by the way. We always enjoy having them on.
Yes.
They have a great feel for what it's like to be an elite athlete. They also have a good pulse on many of the athletes in the field. I thought it was cool that they put their thoughts together to come up with one list there. Nice job pulling the images of both of them. I know there were a couple other things that you maybe wanted to touch on before we wrapped it up tonight. There's obviously been a lot going on in the CrossFit world, and you know, we were pretty much focused on Bilbao over the weekend, which was a great competition. But what's on your mind?
I know we and you talked about it, and hopefully we'll be able to get Brent on, and we'll obviously talk to him a couple times there while we're in Scotland. But I don't think this was anything that kind of surprised us. I mean, we both were in Tier SoCal, and it just had an era, like we had a lot of interaction with Fikowski and the world team, but it almost felt like a swan song to him, like he was kind of saying some goodbyes, and you know, you know, I'm not too surprised by this, but at the same time, it sucks, but you know, it's for the greater good, according to him, which I hope it is.
Albus Dumbledore. For the greater good. Yeah, I mean, Brent Fikowski, I think it just, I think it was probably a hard decision for him. I am sure he's alluded to it in his post. I think I'm confusing all the different things I read, that he feels like he's still at the top of the game. He feels like he's still getting better, but you know, I think he's just assessing all the components of his life and making a decision that he thinks is best for the sport, best for his family, and best for himself. So, you know, he doesn't do anything without giving it a lot of thought and consideration. I'm sure that he's consulted with many people on this, and it's, you know, making it in solidarity. The you know, the thing that we put out about him, some of the other people have put out some stuff about him recently. I think there was an article on Spin, there was an article on Morning Chalk Up, but we decided to just limit ours to an Instagram post that encapsulated a pretty well-rounded career. This guy basically, open is open. If at every other stage of his career, his resume is just incredible. Multiple regional wins. This very dominant. The regional chipper stat was something I did with Bill and Chase on their show years and years ago. At the semifinals, at the sanctionals, at the games, and I don't know if we included it in here, but when you start listing the athletes who beat him at these events, it's like a who's who. This is how the probably the worst person who's beat him at a serious competition is Travis May.
Oh,
and Travis Mayer is incredible. What did you think I was going to say?
Lucas Hogberg.
Oh, Lucas Hogberg. Yeah, that's a good point. Travis Mayer is definitely better than Lucas Hogberg over his career. But like that's the caliber of the worst athlete that he's losing to in competitions. Most of the time, it's a Fraser or it's a Vellner or it's a Medeiros or it's an Adler or it's a Ben Smith. It's like Ricky Roman, and he's beating most of these guys at times as well. And obviously this year also Dallin and James. But the fact that him and Vellner are linked at the hip. They came into the scene together at the highest level in 2016 and were immediately in the top 5. And 9 years later, they're still in the top 5. We often talk about how the level of athlete is improving. These guys have found a way to keep up with that improvement, and it's really difficult to express or quantify how hard that is to do. And both of those guys, by the way, had full-time jobs, got married, had kids, and still found a way to travel the world, excel at every competition, and keep up with younger athletes in the ever-changing landscape of this sport. So a career that you really can't say enough good things about. And as some other people have said, I fully expect him to do great things after competing as well.
Yeah, but want to kind of put it up there, kind of like our admiration for him, and for one being a good friend to us, a good ambassador of the sport, and he's going to continue to be a great ambassador for the sport, but just at a different level. And I actually think he is someone. I think if you have a broadcast and you're not asking this guy to come on to be a part of your broadcast team, now granted you might not be able to get a word in sometimes. But only because that guy has so much knowledge and he likes to tell and likes to talk about it. It's great. But I think it'd be a miss if you didn't at least try to bring him on in one form or the other on broadcast to kind of show you that, because he has so much knowledge and he knows the athletes very well. So, another thing is FitFest is taking shape. Looks like they're unveiling more and more of the roster. It's kind of a slow start there, but they announced Sid Shelby Neal today on Team Rest of the World. And then they also this weekend announced Ella Wilkinson, another one of those young and up and coming Brits, in line with their Jennifer Muir and Amy Kringle, and then Yella Hosta. Him and Annual are the first Europeans not from an island, I guess, because he had at the time the only athletes he had were from Ireland, the UK, and Iceland.
From Finland, Joonakoski,
which is a land. So a land, from a land, a country ending in land. How's that? Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, look, I like they had Jennifer Muir in that, Lucy McGonigal last year. They have Ella Wilkinson this year. I think that the complaints out of Scotland, like put Jennifer Muir in the Rogue Invitational because it's in Scotland, like. That's not the competition that's going to do that. You have to earn your way into the Rogue Invitational. No special handouts because it's in your home country. Ella Wilkinson getting an invite to be a part of this, I love that. If it would have been Connie Easby, Muir again, McGonigal, whatever, but having a local, high level, up and coming, young athlete makes a ton of sense to me. And I also kind of like, maybe it doesn't have the Danielle Brandon, Pat Vellner that we had last year at this competition. But not every competition has to have those. How often do we hear people talk about Paige Semenza, Shelby Neal's not getting the recognition? So for a showcase event like this, to be having an athlete like Shelby Neal in it, who it is easy to kind of glance over or look over. Her performances at the games are not that different from Colton Mertens, really, in terms of finishes. And I think it's a good credit to them to have her in the field.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's great for Colton to kind of I think outside of Dubai, has Colton done an international competition?
Probably not. Will they stream
Yeah.
Fit Fest this year? Haven't heard anything about that yet. I think everybody is hoping that the answer is yes. I think that the competition organizers definitely know that there were people who had hoped that would happen last year and are hoping it will happen this year. It's going to be on the same weekend as Dubai again. So, if they stream it, I don't know if it would conflict time-wise with that. I also don't think it really matters. I think people who love watching the sport will probably watch both. So fingers crossed that they
I also think it's
potentially.
Yeah.
Maybe, but the competitors in Dubai are mostly European, a couple Americans, a couple Australians, and a couple Middle Eastern. So I think that the European contingency will definitely watch both. The North American contingency, which it seems like almost all of Team Wrestle Worlds from North America, would probably take a bigger interest in Fit Fest since it's the athletes they're more familiar with. Although we'll talk about Dubai as it gets closer, but especially. There's some storylines in Dubai that are extremely, extremely compelling. But fingers crossed that Fit Fest will be able to be watched this year, but don't know for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I plan on going just to observe and watch, just because I've heard so many great things about it in terms of it's not a CrossFit competition, or it is truly a fitness festival. Last year, I think they had like a mini High Rocks. They had a bunch of stuff going on. I have yet to truly go to one. I think I went to Arnold one year, but that wasn't really like a fitness type thing. So I really want to kind of go to this and experience it from a fan perspective, and then talk to the athletes, because every athlete we talked to last year, they said they had an amazing time. And and I think that helped inspire some of these other competitions you've seen since then. One of the guys they announced is Annual. You got to see Annual this weekend, kind of a last minute entrance. I mean, he's just continuing this world tour of his. I
basically spent the weekend on a date with Annual. We had dinner and breakfast together every night.
Oh, geez. Girlfriend didn't come to town, did she?
No, she was in Greece competing on a team weightlifting competition. She showed up on Sunday afternoon. She was like the last. I saw her for the first time, and it was the last person I saw before we left to drive back to Madrid. And she was giving me a hard time about exactly that, which is why I mentioned it. She's like,
did it feel awkward? Did you feel like
you had every dinner and breakfast with him. Did you sleep with him too?
You didn't answer that, did you?
I said we might have taken a nap.
Yeah, a nap, exactly. So speaking of that competition, it wasn't easy for him. But you were able to catch it. Amazing broadcast, by the way. I was able to catch it. I thought you guys did awesome. I think obviously having Rodri, who works the back end for us, there, kind of helped. We had multiple camera angles, playing around with some graphics, playing around with some leaderboard and some tracking stuff. But let's talk about the men's side. Annual obviously winning, but it didn't come easy.
No, and I mean, look, Annual is probably he's like burning the flame pretty low at this point. Like you said, I actually was talking to him. He's been traveling almost as much as I have since the CrossFit Games, and even with some potentially more demanding trips, thinking of coming from Spain to Huntington Beach and back, and then to Australia, Gold Coast and back. So he was coming into this knowing that he wasn't at his best, knowing that there were some good athletes in the field. But, I like the fact that he did the competition. We talked about it beforehand, that for, an athlete who's made it on the world stage to still compete in the local arenas is a cool thing that they don't have to do. I mean, it's also a decent paycheck for him, 5,000 euros. And I mean, it was kind of expected that he would win, and he won. He wasn't leading after 3 events. He didn't win an event until event 5 out of 7. He won 5 and 6. I don't think he had to finish worse than 6. And the final was kind of a formality. Tiago Luchas finishes second. Tiago's a guy, I think I first wrote about him 2 or 2.5 years ago. he hasn't really like crested through the way that I thought he would up to this point. Like he's kind of in the same boat as like Tommy Pieri out of Italy. Like I thought those guys would make the semifinal this year. They just didn't. And I'm kind of waiting for them to take the next jump. The thing that impressed me most about Thiago this weekend was his pacing. And it felt like in every single workout, and if for like super fans that remember after the 2001 and 2002 CrossFit Games, I wrote an article for Bar Bend called Consistency Pays Off for Justin Medeiros or something like that. And he was just getting better in every workout, or 75% of the workouts over those 2 seasons. He improved throughout the events from first third to second third to final third of the event relative to his heat. That was Thiago this weekend. He'd start in 7th, he'd be in 5th, and then he'd finish 3rd. He'd start in 10th, he'd go up to the 8th, he'd finish 5th. And he just kept on having these nice finishes. He also qualified for Dubai Fitness Championship, so it was a good opportunity for me to see an athlete who will be in that field that's fairly wide open after the top couple guys and get a little bit more of a touch point on him. And he was, I think, clearly the second best guy there. But the most impressive athlete to me there was Arnaud Sabate. Relative to the expectations that I had for him coming in. Arnaud is pretty good, and he's really, really good at specific things like legless rope climbs, ring muscle ups, chest to bar pull-ups, and he did awesome on those events. There was a AMRAP clean and jerk event with, I think 245 it was for the men, and I think he took 3rd place on that event on Saturday night, and that's when I just was like, okay, compared to the athlete I saw last year at Pamplona, Arnaud is definitely put on some strength and while maintaining the elite gymnastics that allowed him to have 3 top 3 finishes on those events I mentioned. So I asked Daniel at some point during the weekend, and he said, I've traveled around the world doing this sport, and I really think that particularly on the men's side, but even with some of the women in teams, the density of top 200 athletes in the world that's in Spain after the United States is right up there with any country, if not second. They have, and not all these guys competed there. There was 3, 4, 5 semifinal male athletes on the top 2 teams in the teams competition. They have a lot of good athletes there. Arnaud's up and coming. Carlos Ferreira finished 4th, but he won 3 of the workouts. If he had not failed a legless rope climb in event number 2, which cost him a 25th place finish, he probably would have been on the podium instead of Arnaud. It would have been, he was 12 points behind him. Yeah, it would have gone either way. Dami Martinez has not really competed in the last 2 years after having some back problems, so it's nice to see him back in the field. The last time we really saw him compete at the high level was in Dubai 2022. And then, honestly, the rest of the guys in the top 10 are pretty decent as well. But, yeah, it was a fun men's field, but it was really Agnol, Thiago, and Arnaud that were the standouts.
Heading over to the women, 1 second.
This was crazy, dude.
Yes. So
you go.
I mean, I think the biggest, I wouldn't say criticism of Elena, is that we always say Elena is just great online qualifiers, but when she comes into a live competition, she just doesn't finish. She's not a finisher. I mean, you got to see her in a live competition earlier this year up in Finland, and on paper you would think that she would have won, but she finished outside the podium, I believe, right? Finished 5th, I believe.
I spaced out because I was reading CJ's comment. What competition?
The one in Finland.
Oh, Turku Toomey Pipe. Yeah. I would say she underperformed there. Yeah.
Yeah, and she's been known to kind of underperform in live competitions, and really thrives in online competition, but struggles in live competition. So, like, again, on paper, she's always seen as someone that does that you just don't know what you're going to get. But what I was able to see, especially, I was very encouraged by her final days. Like, she just kept on chipping away, and what was a close race between essentially 5 athletes. Her being on top. I mean, what did you see that was different than the Elena you saw in Finland?
This is actually the most amount of time I've ever spent talking with Elena, and she was like really most of the times I've seen her in competition, she just seems very isolated. I've always assumed it to be sort of focused and maybe like not wanting to be social. She seemed really comfortable having friendly conversations, hanging out with other people. So I don't know if it was just a really comfortable environment for her or what, but she had a 9th place to start the competition, and she was just rock solid after that. But she was never leading until after the final. Sylvia Garcia was in second for most of the competition. The second event was actually the first one they did. So she had that 9th, then a 3rd, 1st, 4th, 2nd, and onward from there. Closing with the back-to-back event wins. And I mean, she was nervous. She was feeling the pressure of it going into the final. It was within 3 points between Maria was on 18 points at the time. Sylvia was on 20. Elena was on 21. It was a barbell cycling workout. And I think that, Elena just, the semifinal this year, like, she was looking great, honestly, like better than I expected her to look. She had an injury and she had to withdraw from the competition. It looks like, she seemed healthy. She seemed happy. And, she's, as far as like individual accolades go for Spanish women, she's got kind of the best ones, and she showed this by the end of the weekend.
Yeah. Sylvia Garcia is obviously an athlete who kind of jumped on my radar, like last year at Madrid. And then
she plays fifth. She plays 5th at Madrid. She ended up getting an invite to Dubai because of that. She had a couple of decent workouts there. She competed in Pamplona last year, so we've gotten to see several touch points with her. And on paper, she should have been on this podium, and she was on the podium. And it's one thing to say that you should be doing it; it's a different thing to consistently show up and actually do it. She had a great competition. Also, it's just like, it's not relative to fitness, but they had like this purple, yellow strobe lighting in there with some like little smoke effects, and she's got that hair that's like purple, pink, and blonde. And there's like some of the pictures and videos of her specific look in that kind of lighting were just like wild on her Instagram. It was really impressive. But her fitness showed through at the end, and she ended up kind of, like I said, holding that 2nd place spot throughout. But to me, like I said about Arnau Sabate, who finished 3rd, Maria Granizo was the standout of the weekend. If you click on her event finishes there, you'll see that she had 2 sort of subpar events, but she started 2nd, 1st, 3rd, 1st. And by subpar, I'm talking about 7th and 8th, just because there wasn't a ton of depth in the women's field. But, this girl is 17. She won the CrossFit Games as a 15-year-old. She placed 7th last year as a 16-year-old. And she still has another year of eligibility in the teenage division. We know that there's women around the world that have done stuff like this at that age, but it doesn't matter how many times it happens. I'm always going to be impressed by it. And I left a comment on her post today. It was not just the fitness, it was the maturity. It was the discipline. It was the patience. It was the sticking to her own game plan, event after event after event. And then combining that with just a crazy amount of grit and determination. Like, she doesn't have a ripped 6-pack and jacked muscles. Like, she's 17, but she reminds me of Haley Adams, of just having this tenacity of being able to dig deep and suck it up, capitalize on the things that she's amazing at, hang in there on the things that she's not. I mean, there were some, big and strong women in this field that I thought might be able to even push her further down on those barbell events, and she found a way to stay relevant. Ends up getting on the podium ahead of Elasnagia Zabla, who won this competition last year, beat her last year. Jacqueline Dahlstrom, a 4-time CrossFit Games athlete, was 5th. Ana Alcazar was 3rd at this competition last year. So like, there's some women behind there that you probably would have picked ahead of Maria to be on the podium. She was winning until the final, and she held on to the 3rd spot, and it was very impressive.
Yeah, this could probably be a topic of discussion, but later on. But what I've noticed is from European teen athletes that they don't have the same pressures as it seemed like the U.S. North America athletes. I mean, obviously you hear about Haley, you hear about Mal, you hear about even Emma Lawson and some of these other athletes.
I actually think she's Guatemalan. Is that kind of North America?
Who? Haley?
Maria. No, Maria.
Oh no, I'm talking like, well, either way, I mean, teen athletes outside of the US or North America. I mean, a perfect example is someone like Gabby, who hasn't had those issues. And that's something that, maybe it's just different pressures that their European athletes are getting, or just maybe a different level of maturity. I don't know. but it just seems like the teen athletes from Europe don't really struggle as much. I mean, I don't see someone like Lucy McGonigal burning out. It seems like she's really, she hasn't figured out.
And something I said to someone at the end of the competition about Maria was like, her potential is really high if she wants it. And the person didn't even bat an eye, and someone who knows her well, and she said she wants it. So Maria Granizo is definitely a name to kind of make a footnote next to. If we were still doing our young guns picks, this would be a great one to have in that segment.
Yeah.
I want to
the other highlight was, it seemed like the Guggenheim Museum. I was looking through these pictures, and it just looked like it was such a cool atmosphere. Like this picture, I know, just watching a broadcast, like this is in the middle of the square. People are walking through, and I think this is something that every competition should do. And I think it seems like the Europeans, specifically the Spanish competition, they do a real good job of incorporating the community, the city, the culture with the events, and kind of like melding those. And I think, so, I mean, you want to speak on that real quick?
I didn't really realize that this was going to be happening until you were editing the article and you asked me, and I was like I glossed over that. And even Roger was like, "Oh, is that at the museum?" And I just didn't put it all together. But this is a wildly famous place, and it was a holiday on Friday and then a weekend. And one of the, in addition to just being able to do a workout with the backdrop of a historic monument building museum like that, being out in the public there, you captivate an audience that, I mean, obviously there's CrossFitters and their fans and friends and family and gym, whatever, but there's other people that are there to see the museum, and all of a sudden they see people doing this. And it can, I mean, it's the type of thing that could change someone's life. And we might not ever know it, but there's going to be somebody in Bilbao or that was visiting Bilbao this weekend that happened to be down there on Friday or Saturday, happened to see this going on, got curious about it, and walks into a gym next week and goes, "What is this thing?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I kind of compare it, and I think it took a while for CrossFit to kind of figure out, but like the Madison event, incorporating something so so key to that particular region, and then basing a workout around it. And I think that this is something that other events have been doing way before CrossFit did it with the Madison, but I was just really cool that you were a part of that, to be a part of that. I know that, you said you just walking around, you got to enjoy a lot of that. So no, great competition. You had nothing but great things to say about it. I think you messaged me and Roger at one point, said this is one of the most well-ran competitions I've been a part of. So,
well, it's only their third year doing it. I mean, there's areas for improvement for sure, but there are things that they were doing that a lot of competitions could learn from. And primarily, the thing that stood out to me the most was the schedule. It wasn't a crazy, demanding, stressful schedule for the volunteers and the judges. They had significant breaks built into the schedule that didn't really seem to disrupt the flow of competition or the volume of workouts that people were doing. And it made those people able to function at a high level, get food, get off their feet, enjoy a little bit of time together without just working 14 hours straight or whatever during a day. And it ends up creating a better experience for the athletes in addition to the spectators. And sometimes it becomes this badge of honor of just grinding away for 3 days in a row, 12 hours on your feet and all this stuff. And it's is that really what you want to be doing to those people? How many people were actually going to sign up for that over and over again? So I thought that was one of the elements that they really, really hit home on, which isn't often talked about, but I think is really important.
Yeah. While we're on the topic of competitions, I want to just promote this.
I want to address this comment from CJ here, because it was a contentious thing during the weekend, and there was I was able to clarify with the head judge a rule that if you don't know the rule, this did look really bad. But the rules at this competition, and the judges and the athletes both knew this rule, is that the judge and the athlete are both responsible for their reps during the workout. And so in this case, the judge knew this, Aniol knew this, and the head judge knew this, that he had done 4 legless rope climbs. She had credited him for 3, whether it was because she gave him no rep or she forgot to count the rep. At that moment, he has a choice to make. He can do the extra rep, finish the workout, do the appeal afterwards to try to get the time back, or he can make the decision. Keep in mind, legless rope climbs are pretty difficult, and he was actually pushing the limits of his capacity in this workout. That I am confident I did 4 reps, and therefore I'm going to continue with the workout. At that point, he knew that when he got back from finishing the whole workout, that her scorecard would say a number of reps and not a time. She might have jotted down the time that he crossed the line just in case, but she was only giving him credit to the work up to that point. And everything that I'm saying is how it should have been handled based on the rules. He's at that time says, I'm not signing that. I'm going to appeal, which has been instructed per the briefing that he can do. Then it goes to the appeals process. They review it. And if they decide that his appeal is invalid, then he gets, let's just call it 15 reps, and he takes the last place. If they credit him and say, nope, yep, you win your appeal, then he gets the time that he finished and whatever it was, 4th place. So when I asked the judge after, the head judge of the whole competition, and also Aniol, they both said the same thing to me. Aniol knows the rule. He took a big risk. It's in the appeals process. I know the rules. I took a big risk. I hope I win my appeal. So even though it looked bad on the broadcast and it looked bad to the people in the stands, it only looked bad because they didn't understand the rules. It looked like he was being disrespectful to the judge. He was just making a decision in real time that he knew was risky, and it's understandable that it looked bad to everyone else.
Way to clear it up. Speaking of competitions, I wanted to kind of bring this up because this is one that we were really hoping to be a part of, but due to just travel and not getting a visa on time, we can't. But we do. We're Max and
Carrie.
Yeah, Max and Carrie. Sorry, I'm just drawing a blank. A lot of stuff going on. Max and Carrie, they're real good friends of ours, and we want to help promote their event. They did make an announcement today. They have wildcard athletes, and they announced Jorge, who will be competing this week in Dubai. What a great opportunity for Jorge.
I want to celebrate Asia Fitness Championships, but this started making me have FOMO of not figuring out that visa situation.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure there'll be another announcements to come. So I really like this. I love what Max and Carrie are doing to kind of grow. I mean, this is only going to get bigger in Asia. Like we said, it's going to have close to how many athletes are they estimating that are going to be there? 7,000?
No. My AirPods are dying. This is a long podcast.
I know. But
it's late, Patrick.
I know. But this venue, what the heck? This is the venue. It's crazy.
I know. He's leveling up. He's been leveling up every year since 2017. And I really hope that we can get him on the show prior to the competition. I've already asked him. So hopefully he'll be able to make it on there and talk about and give us some more concrete answers to some of those questions. But we'll continue to highlight this in the run up to it. It's 3 weekends from now.
Yeah. So want to kind of bring that up that they announced against
Belgrade.
The first wild card.
Yeah, 4 weekends from now.
Yeah. Just wanted to kind of highlight that they're bringing some athletes from around the world. So I think that's really cool that Jorge's a part of it. So. And then finally, wanted to, speaking of competitions, but we're only 2 weeks away, is the Belgrade Games. I
had 2 meetings for this today, and I am getting more and more excited for this. I mean, obviously we have Rogue this weekend, and it's going to be epic. We did the women's show. We'll do the men's show. I guess it's so technically tomorrow, but Wednesday.
Yeah.
And but when through the meetings, this post they put up, I know so many of these athletes really well. I'm really excited to get to feature some of the athletes that are a little lesser known to the Western world at a competition that's clearly going to be emotional. But the workouts, I saw all the workouts now. I think they're really good. The broadcast is conversations we were having about that today has gotten me excited. So everything about this is just starting to crescendo for me.
Yeah. And I think, I think what you're going to see in terms of the broadcast is going to be hopefully something that you guys greatly enjoy, something that we've been kind of working about leveling up on what we do. So, it's got me excited that I probably won't be there till the 15th or till either the night of the 15th, but I'll be there for the 16th and 17th. So, but yeah, that's again a long show, and it's late for both of us. But obviously it was great having. Thank you, Jenny. That was towards you, Brian. But yeah.
No, it's like you is one of those words. It can be plural and singular.
The yous. But yeah, great show. Obviously, anytime we can get some good quality guests, especially people that we admire on, it's always fun. And then having you all on to kind of help us along as well. Shout out to HER CBD. Shout out to HER CBD and Strike Movement for supporting us.
I got the Mojaves. They got delivered to the place in Wisconsin today. I mean, I won't see them again for still 6 weeks, but they're there, and I'm pumped.
I did get an email saying I have something at the post office, so I'm hoping it's my my.
Ooh, the Pink Panthers.
Yeah, the Pink Panthers. It's not called the Pink Panthers. What was it called?
What are they called? The Panterras?
Panterra Pink or something like that. Pink Panterra.
It's basically Pink Panther.
Yeah, but no, thanks for them for supporting us. Brian.
At 12:30 in the morning, they're called Pink Panthers.
Yeah, I guess so. But we have we'll run this back with some special guests on Wednesday to talk about the men. I got a busy day tomorrow writing up my side of the piece and getting all the stuff I did for the women up for the men. So if you want more analysis, please head over to befriendlyfitness.com, read the article, let us know what you think. And leave a comment here, and we'll see you Wednesday. And then it's off to Scotland for both of us.
We got a European and an Australian guest. One of them you've heard of before, and the other is probably making his podcasting debut on our show on Wednesday. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, it's always fun when we can bring new people in. I think we've done a really good job with that. So, but thanks for everyone for showing up and dealing with our 2.5 hours show. A lot of stuff that we had to get in, but Brian's got other things going on tomorrow. So I'm jealous, but you're going to have a good time.
Yeah, it's not like it's a big secret, but
I know it's not. I know. I just, if I say it, it just makes me even more jealous. So, but, God, I hope it's gone. I love this. I love these. I didn't even think about Con. Yeah. Con's busy. Too busy right now anyways. But all right. Thanks, everyone. We got to get some sleep. I got an early work day. Brian's got a day of just hanging out in Madrid. And thanks again. And as always, be friendly, our friends.